Hello and welcome to Cinema Hounds, a Lorehounds podcast. I'm Elysia, and this is the second special award season bonus episode, this time talking about everything you need to prepare for this weekend's 79th annual British Academy Film Awards, better known as the BAFTAs. So these are not to be confused with the British Academy Television Awards, which are held in May, or the Game Awards, held before that in April. All three are from the BAFTA organization or the British Academy of Film and Television Arts. But this is their original premiere and, most importantly for this discussion, the Film Awards. So the Film Awards are airing this Sunday, February 22nd at 5 p.m. UK time or 11 a.m. Eastern time. And they are airing in the UK on BBC One or the iPlayer. In the US, they're airing on BritBox Live, although E will apparently air an edited version for Americans at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find a link in the show notes with a list of where to watch per country. It's the first answer in the FAQ page, but you might want to still check your local listings because, for example, it says on this page that they're airing it on HBO Max in Australia. Good. But Brazil isn't included, and they do usually air on HBO Max there as well, as far as I can remember. So, yeah, just make sure you double check your local listings. If it's missing, it doesn't mean they're not airing in your country. And it's definitely worth watching. This is the first year in a few years we don't have David Tennant, but we have Alan Cumming as our host this year. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. I don't even watch Traitors, but I love Alan Cumming from other things. So I think he'll be a great host. We will be trying a live watch again on the Lorehounds Discord for anyone who can and wants to join. This will be early in the day for the US, so 11 a.m. if you're on the East Coast, 8 a.m. if you're on the West Coast. So I understand that might not work as well for people, but hopefully we can get more Brits and maybe even people further east involved this time. We'll see how it works out. I'll be there. So just check out the Discord on the day of, and I will have the live chat for the award season up under current shows so we can chat there. And don't worry, if you don't know anything about the BAFTAs, this episode is your prep. I'm going to let you know what's nominated in which categories, including how these nominations compare to or might affect the Oscar nominations or wins. I should say the final Oscar voting begins 4 days after this ceremony airs. And so it's likely to be at least a little bit reactionary to how these awards go, like we saw with the Golden Globes. Since the nominee voting started shortly after the Golden Globes, we definitely saw some reactions to the outcomes there. Although I will say, although this is considered one of the most important Oscar precursors, it is a different voting body and it does always vote differently. There's always things that make people feel uneasy or on edge because unexpected things happen with the BAFTAs. But it's a different group, and obviously there's going to be a lot more British taste and British pride reflected in this. We'll see some of that in the nominations as we go through. I mean, of course, there are some specific British-only categories, but also overall, you might see that come up more in other categories. The specific British-only categories, by the way, are the two shorts categories, which we talked about in a separate episode. We'll get back to that in a sec. And two of the features categories, the Outstanding British Film and Outstanding Debut. So what I'm going to do here is name all of the nominations, and there is a link to a letterbox list in the show notes. So check that out with a breakdown of the number of nominations per film and what exactly is in each category. For this, I will shout all of that out, but I will focus on the films that are not also nominated for Oscars. You'll notice that there is a lot of overlap as we go. To be eligible for the BAFTAs, though, What's required for features, at least, is a theatrical opening. It needs to first open theatrically, and it needs to play at least 7 consecutive days in a UK cinema during the calendar year in question. And this is why, for example, K-pop Demon Hunters is not on this list. I do really like K-pop Demon Hunters. But I think it's kind of nice it's not here, because wouldn't it be nice to just let a different animated film win something this year? But yeah, they didn't, it's Netflix, and they didn't want to do the full theatrical release in the UK, and that's why they're not here. They tried to petition to get an exception, and BAFTA's like, no, you do the theaters or you're out. But of course, lots of other films did make it. We have 55 films nominated this year in 26 categories, and I'm including the Rising Star Award in that. I'll talk more about why that one's different in a moment. But as I said, you'll see a lot of overlap with the Oscars and a lot of repeat nominations. So this will, like the Spirits episode, speed up as we go, even more so in this case, I think. Especially because we've already talked about 2 of the categories. We've talked about the 8 nominated shorts in 2 categories in a separate episode. You'll find that linked in the show notes. And just a spoiler clarification, as we go, I will talk about the premises of the various movies and maybe some things I did or didn't like about them personally, but I will avoid all film spoilers, just teasers and general thoughts. And then I will end again with my top 10 features that are not nominated for an Oscar, because obviously we'll talk about all those other films in the whole full Oscar series. So let's start with the one of these categories that's not like the others. I mentioned the Rising Star Award, or you'll hear it called the EE Rising Star Award, because EE is a telecom company that sponsors this award. It used to be the Orange Rising Star Award, whatever. I'm not shilling for you anymore, EE. I'm just going to call it the Rising Star Award. The thing that makes this different is this is the only award voted by the public. So people from home can vote here, but it only works in the UK. As of this year, you actually have to verify with a UK phone number before you can vote, even if you vote on the web. And then the winner of this award is the actor themselves. And it's ostensibly for their overall body of work up to that point, not necessarily for a specific film they're in this year, but usually the nomination is unofficially attached to a specific film. So I will shout those out, and I did include those films in the total nominations. So this is the Rising Star Award is, as it sounds, given to the nominee that the public thinks, I suppose, has the most exciting career ahead. It's arguably, there are a few awards bodies that give out a similar award. This one might be the most prestigious. It's been going on for 20 years now. The first award was given to James McAvoy in 2006, and he beat Chiwetel Ejiofor, Gael Garcia Bernal, Rachel McAdams, and Michelle Williams. So yeah, as you can see, the nominees in these categories tend to age well. Other winners have included Ava Green, Kristen Stewart, Tom Hardy, Juno Temple, Will Poulter, Jack O'Connell, John Boyega, Tom Holland, Daniel Kaluuya, Emma Mackey, and last year's winner was David Johnson. And of course, yeah, I skipped a bunch. And if you're like, ooh, she skipped the controversial ones, then yes, good year, I did. But I also skipped some others. There's a lot. Speaking of a lot, just to highlight some of the nominees who didn't win, just to show, this really is an award where it's truly an honor just to be nominated. The people who are honored just to have been nominated are from, the early days, people like Emily Blunt, Cillian Murphy, Elliot Page, Michael Cera, Michael Fassbender, and Rebecca Hall were all nominated in the same year and then lost to Noel Clarke. So that's a win that didn't age well, but most of them did age well. The next year, Jesse Eisenberg, Nicholas Hoult, and Carey Mulligan were all nominated together. So yeah, we've got in intervening years, Andrew Garfield, Emma Stone, Chris Hemsworth, Tom Hiddleston, Eddie Redmayne. All 3 of those went up against each other. Elizabeth Olsen, Lupita Nyong'o, Margot Robbie, Anya Taylor-Joy, Timothy Chalamet, Florence Pugh, Tessa Thompson, Jacob Elordi. You get the point. I'll stop there. The nominees do tend to genuinely go on to become true stars. So, who is nominated this year? Well, the 2026 nominees are Archie Madekwe, who is this year in Lurker, Chase Infinity from One Battle After Another, Miles Caton from Sinners, Posey Sterling from Lollipop, and Robert Aramayo from I Swear. Now, Chase Infinity and Miles Caton, they have a similar story where they are the two breakout stars of the two biggest films of the year. Both of them, it's their first feature. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the movies One Battle After Another or Sinners themselves because I am talking about them in almost every single episode of this series. But I will say that One Battle After Another, we had Sinners broke a nomination record for the Oscars. One Battle After Another broke a record for the BAFTAs, including this award. They were nominated in 15 categories, although the record is the fact that they were mentioned on 16 long lists, which beats the previous record held by a tie between last year's Emilia Perez, a three-way tie from 2023's Barbie, Killers of the Flower Moon, and Oppenheimer, and also 2022's All Quiet on the Western Front. These all had 15 mentions on the long list. So you can see it's kind of a more recent trend to have the greater concentration in a few movies with a lot of nominations. So the nominations that One Battle After Another got at the BAFTAs this year is, in addition to Rising Star, Best Film, Director, Adapted Screenplay, Actress for Chase Infinity. So yes, she's nominated for Rising Star and Best Actress. Actor for Leonardo DiCaprio, Supporting Actress for Tiana Taylor, 2 Supporting Actor nominees, Benicio del Toro and Sean Penn, Casting, Cinematography, Editing, Score, Production Design, and Sound. And the 2 additional categories that One Battle was longlisted for but did not get nominated for is Costume Design and Makeup and Hair. Now, if we go to my favorite of these 2, Miles Caton for Sinners. Obviously, Sinners has done just fine as well. They, including this category, received 14 nominations. So the other ones are for Best Film, Best Director, Original Screenplay, Actor for Michael B. Jordan, Supporting Actress for Wunmi Mosaku, Casting, Cinematography, Costume Design, Makeup and Hair, Editing, Score, Production Design, and Sound. And Sinners was also longlisted in the supporting actor category for Delroy Lindo, but unfortunately he did not get a nomination here, despite the fact that I've recently learned he is actually British. Although when he speaks, like he was just speaking at the Spirit Awards, and he just has the most neutral accent ever. I think he's just been in too many American films and he's just kind of lost his British accent. So I feel better about not realizing until just now that he's British. So anyway, those One Battle and Sinners, I'll shout them out as we go. But as I said, we're talking about them absolutely everywhere else. Let's talk about some new films. Now, I said Archie Madekwe is nominated. He was this year in Lurker. You might have also seen him before in things like Saltburn, Midsummer. I first saw him in the Apple TV show See, with the one with Jason Momoa and the Society of Blind People. But as for Lurker, I did talk about that one a lot in the Spirits preview episode. It did go on Lurker to win Best First Feature and Best First Screenplay at Spirits. But just a reminder that this is the one about the guy from LA who becomes obsessed with a celebrity and tries to finagle his way into his entourage. And Archie Madekwe plays the celebrity. And yeah, he does it very well. He deserves this nomination for sure. And I can't believe Lurker didn't get more attention here. Now, the one film that's not on the rest of this list or any other list is Lollipop. which is the film that led to Posey Sterling getting this nomination. So Lollipop, you can watch it on the BBC iPlayer, and it's about Molly, a young woman released from prison who struggles to regain custody of her children. When she bumps into her childhood friend Amina, the two women soon realize their only chance is to join forces and take destiny into their own hands. And yeah, I mean, I like this one. Posey Sterling was really impressive. It's difficult to believe. I think this was her first feature, actually. Although she's done some like guest stars, or I guess she's played some minor roles in features, but this is really her first massive role like this. And where has she been hiding? I don't know. I hope we'll see her in more soon. The film itself, it's not as much as of a downer as it might seem. It is quite stressful. I did get into it and I found the ending pleasing. So yeah, I recommend watching it if you're interested. But the big British film here, and the person who I think might win this category, is Robert Aramayo, who was a star of I Swear this year, which in the UK you can watch on video on demand now. But Lorehounds might know Robert Aramayo for a different role. He is young Elrond in Rings of Power. And I also saw him this year in another film called Palestine 36, which was the Palestinian submission to the Oscars and was shortlisted but not nominated. He played a villain there, a very mustache-twirling villain. So anyway, between those three roles that I know him from, I do think this one, I Swear, is the best one. It's incredible, the transformation let me set up what it is. So the tagline is, I blink, I twitch, I jump, I click, I whistle, I shout. And if you haven't figured it out yet, this is a film about a character with Tourette's syndrome. And his performance of this was so both sensitive and very convincing. Like, I know a lot of people were looking up after, wait, does he actually have Tourette's syndrome? And no, he doesn't. But the film is inspired by the life of John Davidson, charting his journey from a misunderstood teenager in 1980s Britain to a present-day advocate for the understanding and acceptance of Tourette's syndrome. Diagnosed at age 15, John navigates his way against the odds through troubled teenage years and into adulthood, finding inspiration in the kindness of others to discover his true purpose in life. And I'll say it does open with a scene that you come back to later in the film where he is getting knighted by the Queen. And he tells her to go fuck herself. And I'm wondering if that is accurate. Anyway, this is one of the films that are not nominated for an Oscar. This is, I guess, has the most nominations. It has 6 nominations for Outstanding British Film, Original Screenplay, Actor for Robert Aramayo, Supporting Actor for Peter Mullen, and Casting. And it was also longlisted for Best Film, not just Best British Film, but unfortunately was not nominated in the Best Film category. We'll talk about that. There's fewer slots there. But yeah, so since Robert Aramayo was also nominated for Best Actor, will this one be his consolation prize? Can he win both? Obviously, I said Chase Infinity is also nominated for both, but I think this might be a case where British pride wins. And I have to say that his is just an extremely impressive performance on a whole bunch of different levels. So I'm rooting for him. If you want to see this film for yourself, and I highly recommend it, then it's in the UK. It's already on video on demand. But it's still being rolled out in theaters in the rest of the world. So, for example, here in the Netherlands, I know it's opening March 26th. I believe in the US, it will be opening in theaters April 24th. So watch out for it to play near you. I've yet to hear anyone say a bad thing about this film. So it's a very pleasant drama, but I think a lot of people find it also really eye-opening. And just Robert Aramayo, again, deserves this award. Okay, this is a good place to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the main body of awards, those voted by the British Academy. Be right back. Okay, let's get into the main awards voted on by the British Academy. We've already discussed the full long list of the shorts in a separate episode, which is linked in the show notes, but congratulations to the nominees in the British Short Animation category: Cardboard, Solstice, Two Black Boys in Paradise, and the British short films Magid Zafar, Nostalgie, Terrence, This is Endometriosis, and Welcome Home Freckles. Please listen to that shorts episode for the BAFTAs to learn more about them and my thoughts and predictions about that. And you can also, by the way, for a limited time, if you're listening as this drops, watch all of these shorts on YouTube. There are a couple that are geolocked to the UK, but most are available from anywhere. You can find those on the BAFTAs channel. So we'll just be talking about the feature films here. And just a note that at the BAFTAs, all categories, except for the Rising Star, are long-listed. So most categories have 5 nominations, like at the Oscars and most other award ceremonies. Acting and directing categories have 6 nominations, and there are a few other deviations I'll shout out as we go. I already mentioned that the animated shorts only has 3 films in it. But what I'll do here is I will list the nominees per category, talk about any new films that come up, and share my predictions and how I think some outcomes could affect the Oscar race as well. And then I'll shout out to any other highlights or recommendations from the category's long list. So let's start with the big prize, Best Film. There's 5 nominees in this category, and the nominees are Hamnet, Marty Supreme, One Battle After Another, Sentimental Value, and Sinners. And these are considered also the 5 strongest Oscar nominees. So, interesting matching lineup, a lot of matching lineups at the Oscars this year. I've already shouted out One Battle After Another and Sinners and all of their many nominations that will keep coming up in all of these categories. But let's talk about Hamnet. I think that is the other biggest player, especially this is also, by the way, in the next category, Outstanding British Film. This is the only one that overlaps both categories. I think that the inherent Britishness of Hamnet is likely going to help it do better here at the BAFTAs than it will at the Oscars. It is, after all, it's a story about William Shakespeare. Now, I'm not going to get into like the plots and everything of all these films because we are talking about them all extensively over a whole bunch of episodes. But I will say Hamnet has 11 nominations, including Best Film, Outstanding British Film, Director, Adapted Screenplay, Actress for Jessie Buckley, Supporting Actress for Emily Watson, Supporting Actor for Paul Mescal, Costume Design, Makeup and Hair, Score, and Production Design. It was actually on 3 additional long lists for Casting, Cinematography, and Editing as well, which I'm surprised it didn't get in at least 2 of those, but there's obviously a lot of support for this one across the board. We'll keep talking about it as we go. Marty Supreme, another one of the big ones. I'm not sure it's going to win much at the BAFTAs, except maybe Best Actor, for example. But it is also nominated 11 times for Best Film, Director, Original Screenplay, Lead Actor for Timothée Chalamet, Supporting Actress for Odessa Azion, Casting, Cinematography, Production Design, Costume Design, Makeup and Hair, and Editing, and it was on 13 long lists. So the other 2 that it didn't get nominations for, Supporting Actress for Gwyneth Paltrow and Score. And Sentimental Value also doing quite well at the BAFTAs. 8 nominations for Best Film, Film Not in English, Director, Original Screenplay, Lead Actress for Renate Reinsve, Supporting Actress for Inge Ibsdotter Lilius, Supporting Actor for Stellan Skarsgård, and Casting. And that is actually, it swept its long list. It was long listed 8 times, and it got every single nomination it was long listed for. So you have to wonder, I talked about British support, maybe booing British films a little bit extra, that does have a slight halo effect to other European films that make it this far. So could sentimental value benefit from that as well? So as far as who I think will win this, I think that this might be one battle after another, the biggest nominee winning. And as I said, I have hopes that it will trigger a backlash that pushes things Sinners' way for the Oscars. I do think if anyone else wins this one, Hamnet has an especially good chance of winning at the BAFTAs for Best Feature. We shall see. The rest of the long list for Best Film was The Ballad of Wallace Island. We'll talk about that in a minute. Begonia, Frankenstein, also Oscar nominees. I Swear, that's the Robert Aramayo one about Tourette's. And Nuremberg, which is one that we'll see in the long list. It was longlisted 6 times, 0 nominations. It is set during the Nuremberg trials. It's about especially Rami Malek's army psychiatrist and Russell Crowe's head Nazi kind of forming an odd bond during the lead up to the Nuremberg trials. It is a bit, I don't know, it's an imperfect film. It's a bit fractured, but there are some interesting things in there. But I'm not surprised it didn't secure the noms in the end. It's unfortunately maybe not the film that we would hope for from something called Nuremberg at this particular moment in history. Okay, that brings us to Outstanding British Film. And this is the biggest category in terms of nomination. There are 10 nominees. And this year, only one overlap with Best Film, which I said is Hamnet. But the 10 nominees are 28 Years Later, The Ballad of Wallace Island, Bridget Jones' Mad About the Boy, Die My Love, H is for Hawk, Hamnet, I Swear, Mr. Burton, Pillion, and Steve. And so, okay, Hamnet is the one that we've talked about. The overlap might give it an edge in this category this year. I Swear, I already talked about that as well. That's the other one that I expect to do well. I mean, obviously it wasn't nominated for Oscars at all. It hasn't even opened in the US until April. But I do expect it to take home some awards. It's a dark horse in a lot of categories, including this one. But let's look at the other films. Now, 28 Years Later, if you are a regular listener to this channel, you may know that I really love that film. This is obviously not the most recent one that just came out in January. This is the one that came out last year, and this joined Sinners as one of my all-time favorites. 2 all-time favorites in 1 year. It's a lot. But okay, here is the summary for those who don't know. In 28 days it began. In 28 weeks it spread. In 28 years it evolved. 28 years since the rage virus escaped a biological weapons laboratory, now still in a ruthlessly enforced quarantine, some have found ways to exist amidst the infected. One such group lives on a small island connected to the mainland by a single, heavily defended causeway. When one member departs on a mission into the dark heart of the mainland, he discovers secrets, wonders, and horrors that have mutated not only the infected, but other survivors as well. Bum, bum, bum. So yeah, it is a zombie movie, but it's a zombie movie that has surprising depth and heart, about family, about what does honesty look like? What is a society that you build in a place like this? What do you choose to remember? And we have Ralph Fiennes telling us to remember that we will die, but also remember that love keeps us going. So I love this series so much, and this is my favorite movie in it. I think it's even eclipsed 28 Days Later. So I did a deep dive on it with Jean and Riley, and that'll be linked in the show notes if you want to check that out. And there will be a deep dive into the Bone Temple, the new film that was just released on video on demand, coming very soon, coming at the start of March. So I won't say too much more about it here, but I will say this is the only nomination it got, unfortunately. I'm grateful that they at least remembered it here. But it was longlisted 4 times, so also for adapted screenplay, editing, and original score. And those are perhaps for me the 3 things that make this film especially exceptional. The screenplay, as I was just talking about, the story, the editing, there's some really unusual editing in the way it cuts back and forth and makes these sort of visual references in the middle of the story, and the pacing of like with spoken word poetry and just some really exciting editing going on. And I've been loving that score from Young Fathers ever since I watched the movie the first time. I've been listening to it, so I would have loved to have seen it nominated in all those categories, but it is what it is. If you want to see 28 Years Later, it is now, for now at least, on Netflix. So very easy to watch. But of course, warning for gore. The next one, another one of my favorite movies of the year, definitely in my top 20 of the year, The Ballad of Wallace Island. It's a lovely folk character dramedy set in a small island community. And the summary goes, he's getting the band back together. An eccentric lottery winner who lives alone on a remote island tries to make his fantasies come true by getting his favorite musicians to perform at his home. And I'll just say there's relationship drama and subterfuge going on, and it's just a very quirky, funny folk dramedy, as I said. Yeah. So if something like Once, although this is not quite as sad as Once. But if that sort of thing sounds like your cup of tea, definitely check out The Ballad of Wallace Island. It received 3 nominations at the BAFTAs, adapted screenplay and supporting actress for Carey Mulligan, as well as obviously a best outstanding British film. It was longlisted 5 times, so also for best film and score. And Our Love, the song from it, was, by the way, shortlisted for Best Original Song at the Oscars, but unfortunately did not get any nominations at the Oscars. You can watch it on Sky in the UK or Prime in the US. Next up, Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy. This is the 4th film in the Bridget Jones series, but it's genuinely the best one since the first. Everyone agrees on this. It is the only nomination or long list that it was on, but it was also nominated for the TV Film Emmy and DGA Award, and it won the TV film at the Critics' Choice Award. So it's getting attention because for good reason. The summary is, she's starting a new chapter just as she is. Bridget Jones navigates life as a widow and single mom with the help of her family, friends, and former lover, Daniel. Back to work and on the apps, she's pursued by a younger man and maybe, just maybe, her son's science teacher. So it is the whole part about the grief in the first half and how that's handled and how it's portrayed filmatically. I don't want to spoil anything, but I think that was just really excellently handled and very beautiful the way it's shown. And I think just the maturity in the relationships in this film are what make it so well embraced. For example, it mentions Daniel, that's Hugh Grant's character, and I like they don't change him. They don't try to like make him suddenly be a different person. But there's just, they've known each other for so long. Their love has evolved into this familial kind of love. And yeah, it's just really lovely to see all the relationships between these characters who have been in each other's lives for decades now and been in our lives for decades now, too. So Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy, definitely worth watching. Next up is Die, My Love, which is directed by Lynn Ramsey. Lynn Ramsey, you might know her from movies like Morven Caller or We Need to Talk About Kevin. Die, My Love, this is the only nomination it got, but it was longlisted in 4 categories. So in addition to Outstanding British Film, it was longlisted for Director, Lead Actress for Jennifer Lawrence, but not Robert Pattinson for Lead Actor, and Cinematography. There's a justice for Robert Pattinson this year, but especially he should have gotten nominated for for Mickey 17. But anyway, I've said that enough. So, okay, Die My Love, the plot, as much as there is one, is Grace, a writer and young mother, is slowly slipping into madness. Locked away in an old house in Montana, her increasingly agitated and erratic behavior leaves her companion Jackson worried and helpless. And you can watch this on Mubi. I'll say it's not my favorite personally. It's beautiful. I can see why it was longlisted for cinematography. No fault to the acting of either of the leads, of course, but it's about basically a sort of postpartum psychosis, and it just rings false in that regard to me. And I've heard a lot of other people say the same thing, and it just doesn't really, not much happens in it. It's just kind of people being unhappy for 2 hours. So I didn't love it personally, but other people definitely do love it. So take that for what it's worth. Check out the trailer and maybe you'll have an idea if it's for you or not. Next one up, I did like better. It's H is for Hawk. After losing her beloved father, Helen finds herself saved by an unlikely friendship with a stubborn hawk named Mabel. Through the bond, Helen rediscovers the beauty of being alive. And this has a great cast with Claire Foy. Plays the central character, Helen. Brendan Gleeson plays her father. Denise Gow is her best friend. Lindsay Duncan is her mother. Fantastic cast. This is the only nomination it got or appearance on the long list. But yeah, I mean, I liked it. I am a bird person. I'm an animal person. I am also specifically a bird person. I grew up around parrots, not hawks. These hawks are a whole other thing, especially considering I'm a vegetarian. It was very interesting, though. I learned a lot about hawking through this movie. And I think this movie also said some things about depression that maybe a lot of us need to hear. And it's fun that it's set at Cambridge. I got to visit Cambridge when my friends were in grad school there and eat in the room that they eat at in the movie. But anyway, H is for Hawk. If you want to learn more about hawking, not the man, but the activity, and see that excellent British cast, then this film is out in theaters now in the US and UK. Which brings us to Mr. Burton. This is the only nomination that it received. The plot is, some are born great, some are inspired to be great. In the Welsh town of Port Talbot, 1942, Richard Jenkins lives as a wayward schoolboy caught between the pressures of his struggling family, a devastating war, and his own ambitions. However, a new opportunity arises when Richard's natural talent for drama catches the attention of his teacher, Philip Burton. So, spoiler, this is Richard Burton's origin story. And I didn't really know much about Richard Burton, I've learned. I didn't even know that he was Welsh, I don't think, but he certainly speaks a lot of Welsh in this film. He's played by Harry Lawty, who is someone I've seen in other things. I mean, he did a great job. I don't know if I got the full Richard Burton vibes from him, but he did a fantastic job with his transformation, where especially in his voice, there's a reason why I didn't realize Richard Burton was Welsh, because he spent a lot of time deepening his voice and learning to speak in a very proper, received pronunciation British way. And so we see Toby Jones is the man who adopts him and trains him and gets him into school. And I was really engrossed with this movie. If you want to check it out yourself, you can watch it on the BBC iPlayer. And I do want to shout out that it has some similarities to another movie that unfortunately did not get the nomination but was on the long list. It's called The Coral, starring Ralph Fiennes. And the summary for The Coral is, they were divided by war. He united them in song. As World War I rages on, Dr. Henry Guthrie takes over a British choral society that's lost most of its men to the army. The community soon discovers that the best response to the chaos of war is to make beautiful music together. And this one's available on video on demand. And the similarities are just basically that it's this, there's a similarity in tone, a sort of light dramedy aspect to it. Both are set during wartime and are about basically pursuing art during wartime over what might be seen as more practical, but also the comfort that we find in this in the face of hardships in our lives. I had to especially call out the choral because Marilyn, our favorite Tolkien scholar, Marilyn R. Pakila, she was talking on the Discord about the choral and that she got a chance to see it in the theater and how much she loved it. So I asked if she would record a quick voicemail to share with all of you, just explaining what she found so special in it, to share her recommendation of the choral. So here we go.
Hi, Elysia. This is Marilyn. Bob and I saw The Corral a couple weeks ago now, and we both loved it very much. I have actually lived for a year in Yorkshire, so it was particularly meaningful to me. But I thought it was a remarkable statement of the war and its effects on a small Yorkshire mill town, as well as a comment on middle class and working class issues and the beauty and the glory of music. I thought everyone did an excellent job in their roles. I actually heard a performance of Elgar's Dream of Gerontius in York Minster Abbey the day before I had to leave York after a year-long sabbatical there, and it is quite an amazing piece. As a musician myself, I can't say that I really blamed Elgar for his responses as they depicted them in the film. I thought what they did with the trimming down to fit the capacity of the musicians and relating it directly to the war was a truly masterful idea. And I grieved over the need for gay men to be closeted and the effects that it had on their lives. I'm sorry that it didn't meet up to BAFTA standards. We thought it was excellent. Thanks.
Oh, I wouldn't say that it didn't meet up to their standards. It was longlisted, so that means that it made the semifinals. So that's more attention than most films get. I did recommend to Marilyn also the one that did get nominated that I think I have the feeling that there's a similarity between the two that caused people to vote, say like, oh, we vote for one or the other. So Mr. Burton is the one that did get nominated, and I think Marilyn would also very much like it, especially with the Welsh speaking and all that. So we'll see what she says about that. Moving on to another much more modern one, Pillion. Pillion is another one of the biggest nominees on the British side here. It got 3 nominations for obviously Outstanding British Film, but also Outstanding Debut, which I think is its best shot to win a prize, and Adapted Screenplay. It was longlisted 6 times, so also for lead actor Harry Melling, supporting actor Alexander Skarsgård, and casting. And Alexander Skarsgård did a really funny interview. I don't know, it's like a press conference or something, but he was saying like that he tried to create a smear campaign against his father because his father's getting all the nominations, but his father just got more nominations. Anyway, I love their dynamic as a family. But Pillion, the very different movie from Sentimental Value. The plot of Pillion is Colin, who's the one played by Harry Melling, a timid gay man, is swept off his feet when Ray, Alexander Skarsgård, an enigmatic and impossibly handsome biker, takes him on as his submissive in a crazy and erotic BDSM-focused relationship. And this is one that surprised me because it is actually so relatively warm and funny in a lot of ways. And it was a surprise Christmas movie. I was like, oh, it's a Christmas movie? That's random. But yeah, it's way funnier than you're probably expecting. Although it does leave you with this enigma of a character of Ray. You know, I just want to, like, at the end of the movie, I just want to just shake Ray and be like, who hurt you, baby? What happened? Definitely it's something that's been rolling around in my brain since I watched it. So I recommend Pillion. I think that one's currently on video on demand, recent release. And then the final one in this category was Steve. This is the only nomination, although it was also longlisted for lead actor for Cillian Murphy. And the plot is a quiet storm of emotion. Over one intense day, the devoted head teacher of a last chance reform school strives to keep his students in line while facing pressures of his own. This one, it's available on Netflix, has an excellent cast. Tracy Ullman, Emily Watson, Ben Lloyd Hughes, who plays a kind of villainous character. I had to do Sanditon shout out. If you're a Sanditon fan, you know who he is. But yeah, excellent cast. I quite like this one. I think it's a very well written film. It is one of those ones that's kind of stressful, but Cillian Murphy does an incredible performance. I think everyone does a great performance. And I just, yeah, I think it's a well written one, but not one that has any sort of pat ending or anything like that. So fair warning for that. Although I've heard lots of great things about it from other people who've seen it as well. So high chance you might like it as well. The ones that missed out are Ballad of a Small Player. We'll come back to that in a sec. The Coral, obviously, which we already talked about with Marilyn. Goodbye June, which was Kate Winslet's directing debut about a family coming together around their matriarch who is in her last days in the hospital. The Roses, a remake of the 80s movie about a couple who love to hate each other. This version starring Benedict Cumberbatch and Olivia Colman. And Warfare, which did get a sound nomination. I talked about that one more in the Spirits preview, and I will not rant about it again here. But just to come back to Ballad of a Small Player, this is an Edward Berger movie. It was long listed in 3 categories. So this one outstanding British film, but also production design and cinematography, which very deserving, great production design and cinematography. It unfortunately got 0 nominations. It's a Colin Farrell film. He's the main actor, and I think it's way better than people told me it was. People kept saying how bad it was, but I enjoyed it. I don't think it's perfect. It definitely should not get any writing nominations, but the premise is amid the glittering casinos of Macau, a gambler running from his past and his debts becomes fascinated by an enigmatic woman at the baccarat table. And I think, yeah, it's not as deep as it tries to be. And some of the dramatic staging is a bit hokey or sometimes cringe, but I think it's fun. It's stylish. There is emotion in there. And I really enjoyed getting the chance to explore Macau and environs. And, the ending, I don't want to spoil anything, but normally I was on another podcast complaining about a very similar ending. But in this case, it makes a lot of sense in Chinese culture. It feels very satisfying to me. So I actually liked Ballad of a Small Player. You can watch it yourself on Netflix. And so that brings us to the outstanding debut. This is the other British only category. So the full title is Outstanding Debut by British Writer, Director, or Producer. Back to 5 nominees. The nominees are The Ceremony, My Father's Shadow, Pillion, A Want in Her, and Waste Man. Now, 2 of these I unfortunately have not been able to see. That would be My Father's Shadow, which unfortunately, yeah, it was playing at the Leiden International Film Festival when I went there, but I ended up missing it because of some train trouble. Ugh. But it's a Nigerian film about 2 young brothers who explore Lagos with their estranged father during the 1993 Nigerian election crisis, witnessing both the city's magnitude and their father's daily struggles as political unrest threatens their journey home. Unfortunately, I can't say anything more about it than that. Obviously, people must like it. It is in UK theaters now, so if you're in the UK, you can see it. Waiting to hear what will become of it beyond that. It should eventually land on Mubi. And then the other one that I unfortunately have not been able to get access to is Waste Man. It is opening in theaters here in the Netherlands in April. It is currently in theaters in the UK. Not sure at the plans in the US, but it's starring David Johnson and Tom Blythe. So great cast. And the plot is a bold new vision of life inside. Taylor's hopes for a fresh start post parole are jeopardized by cellmate Dee's arrival. As Dee takes Taylor under his wing, a vicious attack tests their bond, forcing Taylor to choose between protecting Dee and his own chances at freedom. So again, can't say anything more about it than that, although I know people who have seen it in the UK and said it's good. So looking forward to seeing it myself. Now, the other one I shouted out here is Pillion. I did say I think it should win this category. I hope it wins this category. I think it'll be the only win. It's the only one that is also nominated or longlisted in other categories. The rest are all single nominations for this category. So that leaves two. There's A Want in Her from director Mirid Carton. And this one, it's the only documentary on this list about when her mother, Noala, goes missing somewhere in Ireland. Artist Mirid Carton returns from London to find her. Her search takes her into a feuding family, a contested house, and a history that threatens to take everyone down, including herself. And I'll say this one is an intense confrontation of the costs of alcoholism, but it somehow manages to mostly be a pleasant hang at the same time. I think it's fantastically edited. It's very emotionally raw footage that juxtapose the past and present in the filmmaker's life and basically asks how any of us fall off the wagon and the costs of that to everyone around them. If you want to see A Want in Her, it is currently available through the Sky Store in the UK. And then the final one in this category is The Ceremony from Jack King. This is, I think it's an unusual film in an intriguing way. It's about a ritual for the dead, a reckoning for the living. Two troubled migrant workers in a Bradford car wash are dragged into an escalating moral crisis as night falls. Each of them carries private hopes, traumas, and beliefs shaped by their diverse cultures. The two men must find a way to work out their differences if they're to stand any chance of saving themselves and their sanity. So, yeah, I mean, this one, for me, it's kind of all about the vibes. There's also sometimes it's inexplicably surreal. It's kind of a low-key thriller filmed in a dramatically lit, warm black and white. It's about the ways in which people who seem like they might be natural allies are turned against each other by external prejudices and the crushing pressures not to sink under it all. And it's about the darkest of moments that may or may not bring them back together. It did surprisingly make me giggle more than once as we see the central relationship kind of thaw in fits and starts, but just, yeah, don't go in expecting a buddy comedy. It's definitely not that. There are those surreal moments and a lot of very meditative moments. There's like the whole thing is propelled by this slow droning music. But yeah, normally slow cinema isn't my thing, but I was thoroughly engaged in every exchange. The ending is somewhat ambiguous, but I have an idea that I know what happened next. And so that's a good feeling to leave with. And also, yeah, the lead character, a Romanian actor named Tudor Cucu Dumitrescu, he reminds me of like a Romanian Theo Rossi. If anyone knows Theo Rossi, who plays Shades in Luke Cage and also was more recently in The Penguin. Anyway, that's just if anyone's a Theo Rossi fan, you might also find yourself a Tudor Cucu Dumitrescu fan. Sorry if I butchered the Romanian pronunciation of that name. This one is available on video on demand in the UK. And then the rest of this long list was The Man in My Basement, which is a sort of spooky quasi-horror film about racism, but also with Willem Dafoe. You can watch that on Disney. Mother Vera, we'll come back to that in a moment. Ocean with David Attenborough. This one's also on Disney because it's a National Geographic film, and it's exactly what it sounds like, about the ocean just expect nice pictures and warnings about how we're destroying our planet. The Shadow Scholars is a documentary from Channel 4 about the practice of college students hiring what turn out to be Nigerian researchers and writers, and how that's all being upturned now by what's going on with AI and all the controversies around all of that. And then the final one is Urchin, Harris Dickinson's directorial debut about a man who gets out of jail and gets stuck in a cycle of homelessness and losing jobs. And yeah, it's not an uplifting one, but there's some good vibes there. But I wanted to talk more about Mother Vera, which is probably the most under the radar one on this list. It is a co-production, it is a British film, but it's a co-production with Belarus, and that is where it is set and the language it's spoken. So that makes it the second Belarusian film that I've seen this year, after the Swan Song of Fedor Ozerov, which I talked about in the Leiden International Film Festival episode for subscribers. So it's interesting. Yeah. So Belarus, these are probably the only two films that I've seen from the country overall. So I'm very interested to see if there's a burgeoning film industry that will be coming out of there. But this one, it's shot in black and white and a lyrical documentary style. Vera takes us from the hidden religious world of the Belarusian convent to rural farmlands where men and women facing personal and social difficulties live and work. It is here that Vera expresses her deep connection with the horses that she looks after as part of her obedience, religious duty. The film is narrated by Vera as she tells her story of finding faith as a young woman and the impact it has had on her emotionally and spiritually. So it is, the black and white photography is gorgeous with using dramatic natural lighting. It definitely swept me up. The cinematography swept me into the main character's robes from the opening shots. It is, overall, it's very quiet and contemplative and diffuse. There is a compelling backstory, but it's slow to unfold, and it's about lingering in the small moments. It does kind of make monastic life look a bit appealing, the whole religious part aside. But yeah, especially the fact that she's caring for horses while she's there. And I'll say this is definitely a film for the horse girls, and I mean that in a non-gendered way. So Mother Vera, not easy to find yet, but I recommend keeping an eye out for it if that sounds good to you. Which brings us to the last of the general best feature categories. This is film not in the English language. This is the exact same list as the Oscar nominees. It was just an accident. The Secret Agent, Sentimental Value, Surat, and the voice of Hind Rajab. I am predicting the same outcome, which is Sentimental Value. I do think it's a bit less likely that Secret Agent might jump up and snap that way because, again, different voting body. So I do think Sentimental Value will win. But even though they landed on the same list of nominees, there are different qualifications. The only real restriction for film not in the English language is that it's primarily not in English. It doesn't have to be submitted by a single country. And the award goes to creators, not to the particular country. So looking at it from that perspective, it was just an accident submitted by France at the Oscars. Here, it's a co-production between Iran, France, and Luxembourg. And of course, it's set in Iran. The languages are Persian and Azerbaijani. And this one was also longlisted for original screenplay, and it did get an Oscar nomination in that category as well. So we talk about a lot more in the international episode. That's true of all 5 of these films, so I'll move through them quickly. I'll say The Secret Agent, that's the Brazilian film. It's, of course, in Brazilian Portuguese. There's also some English and German in there. And it did here get an original screenplay nomination as well. Sentimental Value. I already listed all the nominations and long list for that one, but I'll say it is a co-production between Norway, France, Germany, Denmark, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. And the languages spoken are Norwegian, English, Swedish, and Danish. And Surat, that is a co-production between Spain and France, and they speak Spanish, French, Arabic, and English. And it was also longlisted for casting. At the Oscars, it was nominated for sound, and I can't believe that it was not longlisted for sound here. That is like the number one thing that everyone talks about with this film. But anyway, we'll talk about that in the sound category episode. And then the voice of Hind Rajab, a co-production between Tunisia and France. Tunisia submitted it for the Oscars. The language is Arabic. It is set in, actually, is it set in Palestine or is it set in Israel and they are calling to Palestine? Anyway, it doesn't matter. That is one of the toughest watches, definitely the toughest watch in the fiction side of all of the Oscar nominees, but definitely a worthwhile one. Anyway, we talk about that a lot more in the international episode. It was also longlisted for the director Kauthar Ben-Hania here as well. Although it's not my favorite film of hers. My favorite film of hers is a documentary she did a few years ago called Four Daughters. The rest of the long list for the BAFTAs for film not in the English language is there was an Italian film called La Grazia about the final days of the presidency of a fictional Italian president where he's contemplating whether or not to sign a bill about euthanasia and whether to pardon two people who are arguing euthanasia for the reasons why they killed their spouses. From Taiwan, there's Left-Handed Girl. We'll come back to this. From South Korea, there's No Other Choice. We'll come back to this. From France, there's Nouvelle Vague. I'm not going to come back to this. I did talk about it a little bit in the Spirits episode, but it's about Richard Linklater film about the creation of the classic 1960 film Breathless. And then the final one here is Japan. It's Rental Family from Japan, and we'll come back to that. But let's jump into Rental Family from... It is largely in Japanese, but it's starring Brendan Fraser, who is an American actor in Tokyo struggling to find purpose until he lands an unusual gig working for a Japanese quote-unquote rental family agency, playing stand-in roles for strangers. As he immerses himself in his clients' worlds, he begins to form genuine bonds that blur the lines between performance and reality. And yeah, I found this one warm and funny, and yeah, it is kind of emotionally manipulative in some ways, but in a very enjoyable way. It's a very hopeful and satisfying movie with a broad appeal. So I can recommend that one to almost anyone. And if you listen to our Oscars episode, David also highly recommends this one as well. It was also longlisted for director, but it did not get the nomination there either. And if you want to watch it, you can watch it on Hulu in the US or video on demand elsewhere. But I love the other two films even more. Let's jump back to Left-Handed Girl from Taiwan. This is about a mother and her two daughters who moved to Taipei to open a noodle shop at a vibrant night market. But family secrets and tradition test their fresh start. And this is one from a longtime Sean Baker collaborator. So he also collaborated on this as well. I found it hilarious, heart-wrenching, gratifying. The story does meander, but in a way that like satisfyingly pulls all of the pieces of the journey that it went on back together into a like messy, but not messy in writing, but messy in the realism of life and love and familial relationships and the mistakes we made and how we forge on through anyway. And it's definitely the titular Left-Handed Girl. It's got to be one of the best child performances I have ever seen. So I highly recommend Left-Handed Girl. You can watch it on Netflix. And then the other one I have to recommend, which is finally on video on demand now, is No Other Choice. This is, you might have subscribers will hear me on our Second Breakfast episode calling it A Snub Above the Rest, referring to the neon billboard campaign. The summary, this is one from South Korea from Park Chan-wook, and the summary is, would you kill for a job? After being laid off and humiliated by a ruthless job market, a veteran paper mill manager descends into violence in a desperate bid to reclaim his dignity. And the star is Lee Byung-hun, who people might know as the front man in Squid Game. I think he should have been nominated for an Oscar for this one, but I've talked about that elsewhere. I also think it should have gotten cinematography and editing nominations here and at the Oscars. But anyway, I don't get to decide these things. This is just one, as it sounds, it's about the crazy things we do for capitalism. It's got a great soundtrack. It's very fun. It is, it's dark. Keep that in mind. It goes dark places, but definitely in a comedic way. And I love love how they keep working the conversation "no other choice" into conversations very naturally throughout. It comes up a lot. It's just reinforcing the themes. It is adapted from a book, and from which there's already a French film adapted called The Axe. I have not, or Le Hachet. I've not gotten to see that yet. I've not carved out the time for it yet, but I hope to watch it soon. If you want to see No Other Choice, as I said, look on Video on Demand. And so that completes the main general feature categories. Let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, let's talk about the acting and casting categories. See you in a sec. Okay, let's jump right into Best Actor in a Leading Role. So, again, the acting and directing categories get 6 nominations each. So, the 6 nominees for Best Lead Actor are Robert Aramayo for I Swear, where he plays John Davidson, Timothée Chalamet playing Marty Mauser and Marty Supreme, Leonardo DiCaprio for playing Bob Ferguson in One Battle After Another, Ethan Hawke for playing Lorenz Hart in Blue Moon, Michael B. Jordan for playing both Elijah Smokemore and Elias Stackmore in Sinners, and Jesse Plemons for playing Teddy Gatz in Begonia. So obviously we've already talked about Sinners, One Battle, Marty Supreme, and I Swear. So that leaves 2 new films, but these are also almost exactly the same nominees as the Oscars. Basically, Wagner Moura is out in this version, and Robert Aramayo and Jesse Plemons are in. Now, Jesse Plemons is one whom a lot of people were really hoping to see get the nomination at the Oscars. So there was kind of a feeling that it was between him and Wagner Moura. Robert Aramayo, of course, not eligible for the Oscars because that film has not been released in the US yet. So he would be eligible next year, actually. Not that I think that that's going to happen. But it could, you never know. Anyway, just to talk about the 2 films we haven't really talked about here yet. We have Ethan Hawke for Blue Moon, also nominated for an Oscar. And there are a lot of Ethan Hawke truthers out there who think that he will genuinely win the Oscar. We'll see about that, but it's much less likely here. We will, of course, talk about this film more in the Oscars acting episode, but since probably a lot of you aren't familiar with it, I'll say it is another Richard Linklater film. He did put out 2 films this year, also Nouvelle Vague. And this one is about on the evening of March 31st, 1943, legendary lyricist Lorenz Hart confronts his shattered self-confidence in Sardi's bar as his former collaborator Richard Rodgers celebrates the opening night of his groundbreaking hit musical, Oklahoma. So this is basically, it used to be Rodgers and Hart who were a duo, and then I knew that at some point it became Rodgers and Hammerstein, and I knew that Hart passed away, which they do reference or even kind of show in this film. I didn't know where or why Rodgers and Hart stopped working together, and this film addresses that. It is very much, it feels a lot like a play. It's mostly in one setting in Sardis, just moving between a few rooms with just a handful of characters. But it's a pleasant watch, and Ethan Hawke does some really interesting work, very out of character for himself. And I think that there are just a lot of people who just want to see him get the recognition he deserves after such a long career in the industry. But as I said, I think that's more likely to happen at the Oscars than here. Not that I think it's going to happen there either, but I'll say Blue Moon was longlisted in 3 categories. So in addition to Best Actor, also longlisted for Original Screenplay and Supporting Actor for Andrew Scott, who plays Richard Rogers. But it was only nominated for Best Actor here. It does also feature Margaret Qualley and Bobby Cannavale, who are great conversation partners for Ethan Hawke as well. Actually, more so than Richard Rogers, which is really a supporting role in this case. If you want to see this one for yourself, it's on Netflix or video on demand. And then that brings us to Jesse Plemons for Begonia, which, as I said, is the one that people really hoped to see at the Oscars. So at least he got a nomination here. Begonia is from one of my favorites, Yorgos Lanthimos, the director. And it's about 2 conspiracy-obsessed young men who kidnap the high-powered CEO of a major company, played by Emma Stone, convinced that she is an alien intent on destroying planet Earth. And this one, Begonia received 5 nominations, so Best Actor, Director, Adapted Screenplay, and Lead Actress for Emma Stone, and Score. It was longlisted 12 times. So it was longlisted for, but did not receive nominations in Best Film, Cinematography, Production Design, Costume Design, Makeup and Hair, Editing, and Sound. So definitely a lot of support for it here. I will mention, with the European halo, Yorgos Lanthimos is definitely claimed by Europeans as a European director, even though I feel like this film is very American, even though it's a remake of a Korean film. But Begonia did also get a number of nominations at the European Film Awards. So anyway, I've talked about this in lots of other places, and I will talk about it some more. But yeah, I do quite like Begonia. And if you want something and very interesting, dark character study with some weird twists, then definitely check it out. It's on Peacock in the US or video on demand elsewhere. And the rest of the long list for Best Actor was Russell Crowe for Nuremberg, Joel Edgerton for Train Dreams, snubbed again. He was another one that people thought might wind up on the Oscar list. Harry Melling for Pillion, and Cillian Murphy for Steve. So all pretty much worthy nominations. I love Russell Crowe. Maybe I wouldn't have nominated him. Just the others are a step ahead. All right, let's swap over to Best Actress in a Leading Role, where the nominees are Jessie Buckley for playing Agnes Shakespeare in Hamnet, Rose Byrne for playing Linda in If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, Kate Hudson as Claire Sardina in Song Song Blue, Chase Infinity as Willa Ferguson in One Battle After Another, Renata Reinsva as Nora Berg in Sentimental Value, and Emma Stone as Michelle Fuller in Begonia. And this is, again, exactly the same list as the Oscars, but plus Chase Infinity. So we'll talk all about these over on when we get to the Oscars, but I will shout out since we haven't talked about If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, I will shout out that Rose Byrne did just win the Spirit Award for this, although the rest of the people in this category were not up against her for that. She did also, though, win the comedy category, Golden Globe before that. We'll talk about more of her wins in the Oscars acting episode, but it's generally considered like if Jessie Buckley, if she for some reason doesn't get the Oscar, then Rose Byrne would be next in line. And I think it's the same for the BAFTAs. I think Jessie Buckley is even more likely to get the BAFTA here because, the very Britishness of it and the Shakespeare film and all that. But if not her, I would say it would be Rose Byrne. It is the only nomination that this film received. It's about a woman whose life is crashing down around her, and as she attempts to navigate her child's mysterious illness, her absent husband, a missing person, and an increasingly hostile relationship with her therapist, who's played by Conan O'Brien in a very an uncharacteristically serious role. Also, shout out Aesop Rocky, who is a guy who works at the hotel, whom she befriends. She's staying at the hotel because her house is falling apart. It is a very stressful movie, but a surreal one as well. And Rose Byrne does give a knockout performance. You can watch it on HBO or video on demand. And the other one we haven't talked about yet in this episode is Song Sung Blue, the sole nomination for Kate Hudson's acting. This was the surprise nomination at the Oscars in this category, although if you had your ear to the ground, it wasn't a complete surprise. People, Kate Hudson's been campaigning and people have been very supportive of that. It's based on Song Sung Blues, based on a true story about two down on their luck musicians, so her and Hugh Jackman, who form a joyous Neil Diamond tribute band, proving it's never too late to find love and follow your dreams. But I'll say the movie takes a number of dark turns that you wouldn't necessarily guess from that description or the trailer. I was glad to know going in that was the case. I won't say what they are, of course. I will say she has great chemistry with Hugh Jackman, and although the reception of the film itself has been kind of so-so, I'll say it's a worthy nomination because it is a surprisingly demanding role. She sings, she has to have a bubbly personality, but then she also goes through periods of trauma and depression, so a lot of acting in there. If you want to see it yourself, it's on Peacock or video on demand. And then the rest of the long list, so there's only 4 others for these since there's 6 nominees. Cynthia Erivo for Wicked for Good. We'll talk about that film in another category. Jennifer Lawrence for Die My Love, which we'll also talk about in another category. Andrea Riseborough for Dragonfly. That's the 3rd film that I didn't get to see. Nothing to say about it. And Tessa Thompson for Hedda. So let's talk about Hedda real quick for a second. This is the new Nia DaCosta movie adaptation of the Ibsen play about a woman who feels bored and trapped and does horrible things because of it. The official description is, "A little chaos is good for the gathering." Hedda Gabler finds herself torn between the lingering ache of a past love and the quiet suffocation of her present life. Over the course of one charged night, long repressed desires and hidden tensions erupt, pulling her and everyone around her into a spiral of manipulation, passion, and betrayal. And so you can watch this one on Prime, and I'll leave it here because Lisa and I do talk a bit more about this one in the production design episode. This definitely deserved costume attention. Okay, that brings us to Best Actress in a Supporting Role. And the nominees are Odessa Azayan for playing Rachel Mizier in Marty Supreme, Inge Ipsdotter Lilius for playing Agnes Borg Peterson in Sentimental Value, Wunmi Masaku for playing Annie in Sinners, Carey Mulligan for playing Nell Mortimer in The Ballad of Wallace Island, Teyana Taylor for playing Perfidia Beverly Hills in One Battle After Another, and Emily Watson for playing Mary Shakespeare in Hamlet. So this is here also, like the Oscars, one of the more interesting categories. There are a few differences with the Oscars lineup. For one, no Elle Fanning nomination. She wasn't even longlisted for this one. And no Amy Madigan, though she was longlisted here. But we do get instead 3 others because, again, 6 nominees. So Odessa Azayan is one whom I would have loved to have seen nominated at the Oscars. Glad to see her nominated here. For Marty Supreme, she really kind of steals the movie from Timothée Chalamet a bit at times. Carey Mulligan, love her, love The Ballad of Wallace Island. Happy to see her. And Emily Watson, now I just name dropped her for being in the Cillian Murphy movie Steve, but no, this is for Hamnet, where she plays Jessie Buckley's mother-in-law, William Shakespeare's mother. As far as who is going to win, it could be Teyana Taylor is kind of considered the expected winner at the Oscars, at least. I would say it's possible for the more British or European options to take precedence here, specifically maybe Carey Mulligan, but I would say more likely this might be Inge Ipsdotter Lilius's time to shine. She's getting a lot of love for this portrayal. And this might be the category where sentimental value takes home a statue. Perhaps the next one. We'll get to that in a second. The rest of the long list was Brenda Blethyn for Dragonfly. Yeah, again, haven't seen that one, but the cast seems great. Ariana Grande for Wicked for Good. Again, we'll come back to that. Amy Madigan for Weapons. Missed her here. We'll talk about it in the Oscars episode for acting. And Gwyneth Paltrow for Mighty Supreme was not on the Oscars radar per se, but yeah, a worthy nomination, fun role. Good to see her back acting again. Let's move on to Best Actor in a Supporting Role. The 6 nominees are Benicio del Toro for playing Sensi Sergio St. Carlos in One Battle After Another, Jacob Elordi for playing the creature in Frankenstein, Paul Mescal for playing William Shakespeare in Hamnet, Peter Mullen for playing Tommy Trotter in I Swear, Sean Penn for playing Colonel Stephen J. Lockjaw in One Battle After Another, and Stellan Skarsgård for playing Gustav Borg in Sentimental Value. Differences from the Oscar nominations is no Delroy Lindo here, though he was on the long list. But Paul Mescal did get in, he was considered one of the biggest Oscar snubs overall, the fact that he wasn't nominated. And then the other addition is Peter Mullen from I Swear, which again was not eligible this year in the US, but does show general support for this film. Definitely a worthy nomination. He plays a very likable character who definitely has a supporting role, and there's no category fraud here. I don't think that he will win, though. I do think I've been predicting Stellan Skarsgård for the Oscar. I think there's a good chance that he could take this one home too, but I also think that this is a category that Hamnet could pick up a statue for Paul Mescal. He does play a really kind of charmingly doofy William Shakespeare who, matures and becomes a more worldly man and playwright, and you see that from afar. So he really is a supporting role in this as well. It really is about his wife in this story. I won't, though, shut out a chance for Jacob Elordi for playing the creature in Frankenstein. I think that's a very worthy one. It may be the best portrayal of the creature I've seen. I know Jean said that in our Frankenstein episode, which you'll find linked in the show notes. Frankenstein, since we haven't talked about it yet, it did get 8 nominations at the BAFTAs. So for Best Supporting Actor, of course, but also cinematography, production design, costumes, makeup and hair, score, VFX, and sound. And it was longlisted for 4 additional categories: Best Film, Adapted Screenplay, Casting, and Editing. But I won't go on more about this because in addition to the entire deep dive episode we already did, there's going to be lots of Oscar talk because it got lots of nominations there as well. The rest of the long list was Delroy Lindo for Sinners, Adam Sandler for Jay Kelly, which is a film that really fizzled and died in award season. This is the only place it was longlisted. Andrew Scott for Blue Moon, again for playing Rogers. And Alexander Skarsgård for Pillion is the one I would really like to have seen on that list. I think that he did a really... it's another one where he had to do a lot with his eyes, like Inga Ibsdottir Lilius in the supporting actress part, where he had to communicate a lot of like an entire backstory that a character will never say with his mouth, with his eyes and his small little actions. So I think he would have been a worthy nominee, but alas. And then Best Casting, where the nominees here are I Swear, casting by Lauren Evans, Marty Supreme by Jennifer Venditti, One Battle After Another with Cassandra Koulikoundis, Sentimental Value from Ingvo Kolstad-Haga and Avi Kaufman, and Sinners from Francine Mazier. Compared to the Oscars, again, quite similar. The difference is no Secret Agent, surprisingly no Hamnet, although it is on the long list. And instead, there is I Swear, which of course, the BAFTA's only one, not yet available elsewhere, and Sentimental Value. So this one is a tough call. I don't know. I might be tempted to give it to the two that made it onto the list that aren't on the Oscar list. I Swear or Sentimental Value. So I guess if you press me, I'll go with Sentimental Value. But yeah, I swear the cool thing about that is not just the Robert Aramayo casting where he did such a phenomenal job, but I would say it's the casting of a bunch of real people with Tourette's who pop up as the movie goes on. So maybe that does give it the edge. Although for sentimental value, could it be a consolation prize if the acting prizes don't go through, if people vote for this instead? We'll see, we'll see. The rest of the long list for casting is Frankenstein, Hamnet, A House of Dynamite, we'll come back and talk about that later, Pillion, and Surat, the Spanish film nominated for non-English language film also. Okay, this is another good place to pause. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the directing and writing categories. Welcome back. Let's jump into Best Director. This is, again, one of the categories with 6 nominees, and so those 6 nominees are Paul Thomas Anderson for One Battle After Another, Ryan Coogler for Sinners, Yorgos Lanthimos for Begonia, Josh Safdie for Marty Supreme, Joachim Trier for Sentimental Value, and Chloe Zhao for Hamnet. This is the same list as the Oscars with the addition of Yorgos Lanthimos for Begonia. So it's a good indication that that film was probably on the cusp at the Oscars too of getting nominated in this category. Although the BAFTA could go to someone quite different than at the Oscars. Now at the Oscars, the front runner is considered to be Paul Thomas Anderson for One Battle After Another. I could see them going a bit more Brit or European here with maybe Chloe Zhao, the director of Hamnet, or Joachim Trier for Sentimental Value. If it doesn't go to Paul Thomas Anderson, I wouldn't be surprised to see one of those two take it instead. The rest of the long list is Lynn Ramsey for Die My Love, Catherine Bigelow for A House of Dynamite, Hikari for Rental Family, and Kauthar Ben-Hania for The Voice of Hind Rajab. Let's dip over to the writing side with Best Original Screenplay. Here, back to 5 nominees. The nominees are Ronald Bronstein and Josh Safdie for Marty Supreme, Ryan Coogler for Sinners, Kleber Mondosia Filho for The Secret Agent, Kirk Jones for I Swear, Eskil Vogt and Joachim Trier for Sentimental Value. And there are 2 differences with the Oscars list here. There's no It Was Just an Accident, nor Blue Moon, and instead we get The Secret Agent and I Swear. Not surprised to see I Swear here. The Secret Agent, it's interesting, no Wagner Moura, but yes to this nomination for Best Original Screenplay, whereas I personally, I'll say Teodoro, Brazil, I don't love this movie. So my favorite part of the movie is Wagner Moura. My least favorite part of the movie is the screenplay because I just find it kind of a bit all over the place and over-explaining in places where it shouldn't and under-explaining in places where, I want more. So the screenplay here just didn't work for me. So I would have much rather have seen It Was Just an Accident here. The Iranian French film that has an ensemble cast of distinct characters and quite the memorable ending. As for who will win, I don't know. Again, I wonder if I Swear and Sentimental Value have more of a chance in the BAFTAs. I could see. Otherwise, yeah, we all expected to be Sinners, that Sinners would take this award. But I don't know. I just have a feeling that Sinners will underperform at BAFTA. Let's see. The rest of the long list for Best Original Screenplay was Blue Moon, A House of Dynamite, Is This Thing On, It Was Just an Accident, and Weapons. And Weapons is also on the long list at the BAFTAs for Best Supporting Actress for Amy Madigan, unfortunately was not nominated, and for editing. And Weapons is one of my top 5 films of the year. Yes, prestige horror, definitely my favorite genre, but We did a whole deep dive episode into why I think the writing here is brilliant. So you'll find that linked in the show notes. But I do want to shout out another film that we haven't mentioned yet in this category and on the long list, which is This Thing On? The latest Bradley Cooper directed film, and he also played a supporting role in it. And the other primary characters in it are played by Will Arnett, Laura Dern, and Andra Day. And the plot tease is: as their marriage quietly unravels, Alex faces middle age and an impending divorce, seeking new purpose in the New York comedy scene, while Tess confronts the sacrifices she made for their family, forcing them to navigate co-parenting, identity, and whether love can take a new form. And this is available in the US, at least, on video on demand. I I actually really love this film. I was not a huge fan of Bradley Cooper's last directing outing for Maestro. I found that this one was more raw and real, and definitely for the better. You could tell he wasn't going for the prestige this time. He was just telling an emotional story, and I think it made the better film. Unfortunately, it didn't pay off in terms of the awards prestige. So I hope he's happy with just having a film that people seem to really like. I'm not a huge Laura Dern fan, but I still love, and I know that's like inexplicable. I know that I'm a weirdo for that. Whatever it is, I don't know. She doesn't do it for me, but I still love the rest of this film so much that I gave it 4 stars out of 5. I do think Andra Day kind of stole the show at times, although I really loved Will Arnett and Bradley Cooper in this as well. So I definitely recommend Is This Thing On, especially if you're a fan of stand-up. They keep telling him he's terrible at stand-up, but I enjoy it. I enjoy the show. I enjoy all the places that this goes. And I used to, when I lived in New York, I used to go to Comedy Cellar all the time. So it was really, I don't know, fun to see that represented on screen from a backstage perspective even. Okay, let's swap over to Best Adapted Screenplay. And the 5 nominees here are Paul Thomas Anderson for One Battle After Another, Tom Basden and Tim Key for The Ballad of Wallace Island, Harry Lighton for Pillion, Will Tracy for Begonia, and Chloe Zhao and Maggie O'Farrell for Hamnet. And the difference with the Oscars list is there's no Train Dreams nor Frankenstein here, and instead we get The Ballad of Wallace Island and Pillion, which I think I'm actually quite happy with both of those additions, although I really like Train Dreams, and I do think that Frankenstein is a great adaptation. The Ballad of Wallace Island and Pillion are just 2 exceptionally written films. As far as who will win, One Battle After Another might be seen as a front runner just because of the sheer number of nominations, although it is my least favorite thing about that film, the writing and screenplay. But I think at the Oscars even, Hamnet could take adapted screenplay, and I think that here at the BAFTAs, it's even more likely to happen. Although if it does happen, maybe it has a backlash and One Battle gets it because of that, or vice versa. Let's see. As far as the rest of the long list was 28 Years Later. Obviously, I want that on the list. I want that winning, but okay, at least it's on the long list. Frankenstein, Nuremberg, Train Dreams, Wake Up Dead Man, A Knives Out Mystery, which we have not spoken about yet, so I'll just say that's the Rian Johnson movie. It's the 3rd Knives Out movie and my 2nd favorite in the franchise. I'll say that Glass Onion, I didn't really like that one so much, so that's a very distant 3rd, and I did quite like this one. You can watch it yourself on Netflix. The plot of this one is when young priest Judd Duplessis is sent to assist charismatic firebrand Monsignor Jefferson Wicks, it's clear that all is not well in the pews. After a sudden and seemingly impossible murder rocks the town, the lack of an obvious suspect prompts local police chief Geraldine Scott to join forces with renowned detective Benoit Blanc to unravel a mystery that defies all logic. I thought this was a cool setting in the ecclesiastical world, and I thought they did a good job with it. I had fun. I found the characters intriguing. The mystery was compelling and fun. Yeah, it was a fun watch with my family. So Wake Up Dead Man, of course, on Netflix. Now that we're zooming along, let's go right on into Best Original Score, where the 5 nominees are Jerks and Fendrix for Begonia, Alexandre Desplat for Frankenstein, Max Richter for Hamnet, Johnny Greenwood for One Battle After Another, and Ludwig Göransson for Sinners. And I think Ludwig Göransson for Sinners has this in the bag. It could wind up being Sinners' only win tonight, maybe thereby spurring that delicious Oscar voting reaction. I would say it's at least the award that is most locked for Sinners, but if anyone challenges them, it would again be Hamnet, especially here at the BAFTAs. It does have a very memorable riff, a hook, if you will. So I'm going to say probably Sinners, if not, maybe Hamnet. The lineup of nominees is exactly the same as the Oscar list, so I will be speaking about this category in depth with Mark at the start of March. But the rest of the long list for the BAFTAs is 28 Years Later. Again, would have wanted that in there, would have wanted that winning the Young Father score. I'm sure it wouldn't have won even if it had been nominated, but I know what's really good. Sinners, obviously, definitely want to see that win in this case. But okay, so the rest of the list: 28 Years Later, The Ballad of Wallace Island, Marty Supreme, which interestingly, the soundtrack is 80s and the 50s, and then the score kind of fits around it. So I think the soundtrack is more memorable than the score there per se. And then Nuremberg and Wicked for Good. So I think on the long list, the two standouts are 28 Years Later and the folksy Ballad of Wallace Island. Okay, let's talk about the Production Design Awards, starting with Best Production Design, where the 5 nominees are Tamara Deverell and Shane Vio for Frankenstein, Fiona Crombie and Alice Felton for Hamnet, Jack Fisk and Adam Wallace for Marty Supreme, Florencia Martin and Anthony Carlino for One Battle After Another, and Hannah Beachler and Monique Champagne for Sinners. So exact same lineup as the Oscars again, and I discussed this in depth with Lisa, and that's going to be the next episode in this series, so I won't linger too long here either. Winners for Best Production Design, it's we say in the Oscars episode, it's Frankenstein's to lose. That could well translate here. I would say if anyone else takes it, it would be, again, Hamnet, which just really ensconces you in Elizabethan England. Really is some remarkable production design, even if a lot of it is forest. They do forest well. Now, as for the rest of the long list, the other potential nominees that didn't make it were Ballad of a Small Player, Begonia, The Fantastic Four: First Steps, Mickey 17, and Wicked for Good. Now, Fantastic Four: First Steps, of course, MCU, so we did cover that in depth. I'll put that link in the show notes as well, but the production designer there was Kasra Farahani, whom we love from the Loki television series. So it's nice that at least somewhere this is getting recognized. It does feel like there was in some ways a real effort to shut out the superhero films from these categories this year. Hopefully with better embraced films coming out like Superman, which we will mention in a little bit, hopefully we'll get past this quote unquote superhero fatigue that's going on. But perhaps my favorite of the non-nominated films in this long list was Mickey 17. That's the Bong Joon-ho film, one of my favorite directors in the world. And I've said before, Robert Pattinson had one of the best double performances in an oddly exceptional year for double performances in Mickey 17. But also the rest of the cast is incredible with Naomi Ackie, Stephen Yeun, Mark Ruffalo, Toni Collette, and of course the Creeper. I'll say this was also longlisted for VFX for these very realistic alien creatures. So they just did a really good job of setting this on this alien Arctic world and selling that. And, the fact most of it takes place on a spaceship and, just the sort of industrial futuristic aspect of it is they just did a fantastic job there. If you're not familiar with the movie, the premise is he's dying to save mankind. Unlikely hero Mickey Barnes finds himself in the extraordinary circumstance of working for an employer who demands the ultimate commitment to the job, to die for a living. So basically, he is a test subject who gets cloned so that they can test drugs on him or put him in dangerous places. And when he dies, they have his memory backed up and they just print out a new Mickey. So that's why Mickey 17 is the 17th clone and who maybe doesn't die as he's supposed to, which causes some complications. I do think the film could have been 20 minutes shorter, but I still gave it a high score because there's so much pathos and laughs and sociological commentary, and of course that excellent VFX and an absolute 210% commitment from Robert Pattinson. So, yeah, I think this movie was really underrated, and I suppose it opened too early in the year, and it was thus immediately written off because it was seen as a lack of confidence, the fact that they pushed this film from award season last year to the beginning of this year, to the sort of no man's land of January. But anyway, if you want to see this film and the excellent production design and VFX for yourself, you can find it on HBO Max. Which brings us to the next Production Design Award, Best Costume Design, for which the 5 nominees are Kate Hawley for Frankenstein, Małgorzata Terzanska for Hamnet, Miyako Belizzi for Marty Supreme, Ruth E. Carter for Sinners, and Paul Tazewell for Wicked for Good. And the only difference between this and the Oscar list is that the Oscars nominated Avatar, Fire, and Ash in this category, and here instead we have Wicked for Good. So honestly, I think this is the better list. This is things as they should be. Wicked for Good, we haven't really talked about that yet. I've named it a couple of times. It did only end up getting 2 nominations, this one and for makeup and hair. That's 2 more than it got at the Oscars at least. But it was long listed in 8 categories, the others being lead actress for Cynthia Erivo, supporting actress for Ariana Grande, score, production design, VFX, and sound. And the plot teaser is you will be changed. As an angry mob rises against the wicked witch, Glinda and Elphaba will need to come together one final time. With their singular friendship now the fulcrum of their futures, they will need to truly see each other with honesty and empathy if they are to change themselves and all of Oz for good. This is famously probably the most egregiously snubbed film at the Oscars. It seems like people maybe just aren't vibing with the darker tone of the sequel. For me, as I said in our episode breaking it down, I think I might even like it more than the first, and Marilyn agreed with me. I think Nicole felt maybe the other way, but you can hear us talk about it in our deep dive with full musical and book comparisons, which is linked in the show notes. I do just have to wonder if this is part of maybe a bigger trend we see lately where sequels are being punished and being nominated less. We saw that also with Dune last year, and we've seen it a few other places. So we'll be keeping an eye on that and hoping it doesn't affect Dune Part 3, which hopefully gets its rightful due. But anyway, if you want to see Wicked for Good, you can find that on video on demand. And the rest of the long list for production design, those that were not nominated were Begonia, Downton Abbey, the grand finale, Nouvelle Vague, Nuremberg, and One Battle After Another. So of these 10, I do think the right 5 got in, although I would have liked to have seen Hedda on this list as well. Which brings us to the closely related category, Best Makeup and Hair, where the 5 nominees are Jordan Samuel, Cleona Fury, Mike Hill, and Megan Manny for Frankenstein, Nicole Stafford for Hamnet, Kyra Panchenko, Kay Giorgio, and Mike Fontaine for Marty Supreme, Sean Richards, Shunika Terry, Ken Diaz, and Mike Fontaine for Sinners, and Frances Hannon, Laura Blount, Mark Coulier, and Sarah Nuth for Wicked for Good. So the makeup and hair we talked about is perhaps the most interesting batch of nominees at the Oscars. Here, they went a bit more expected. So there's no Kokuo here, boo. There's no the ugly stepsister here, boo. No, the smashing machine here, good. And instead, we have Marty Supreme, Wicked for Good, and Hamnet, which Hamnet, I guess I'm the most surprised about that. It is a period piece, although I don't know that the makeup and the hair is the most standout part, but maybe more of a signal of Hamnet overperforming, that it has a lot of support at the BAFTAs. If I were making this list, I would have kept the Oscar list, taken out the Smashing Machine, and put in Wicked for Good instead. But they don't let me make the list. Anyway, speaking of lists, the rest of the long list, the films that didn't get nominated in makeup and hair but could have been, were Begonia, Downton Abbey, the grand finale, Nuremberg, One Battle After Another, and The Smashing Machine. And I just think it's an absolute travesty that 28 years later isn't even on the long list for this one that has definitely some of the most impressive makeup of the year. You know, zombies, man. And I guess I should shout out from the long list Downton Abbey, the grand finale, because I haven't done so yet. It is obviously, it's one for the fans of Downton Abbey. I am a fan of Downton Abbey, so it is a film for me. Of the three films since they wrapped up the show, it's not my favorite. I would say the second one is my favorite, but maybe this is my second favorite. Anyway, obviously it's a period piece. We're now coming up on 1930, and the costumes are as ever immaculate, as is the makeup and hair. But okay, here is a good place to take another pause before we come back and get into the tech awards and then the special features. See you in a sec. All right, let's talk Best Cinematography. Here, the 5 nominees are Dan Lauston for Frankenstein, Darius Khondji for Marty Supreme, Michael Bauman for One Battle After Another, Autumn Durald Archipel for Sinners, and Adolfo Veloso for Train Dreams. We haven't talked about Train Dreams yet. It is obviously one of the big Oscar contenders this year, so we're talking about a lot of other categories. But just to mention that it was longlisted 3 times. It did not do as well in BAFTA nominations. Obviously, it was nominated here in cinematography, and beyond that, it was longlisted in 2 other categories for which it did not receive nominations. And those 2 categories are lead actor for Joel Edgerton and adapted screenplay. So it is definitely underperforming here. Maybe it wins this as the consolation prize. I do think it's more likely between the 2 juggernauts here, Sinners and One Battle After Another. I would say Autumn Durald Archipel is the front runner for Sinners at the Oscars. Here, I wouldn't be surprised if they swerved and gave it to One Battle instead. It is the exact same lineup of nominees as the Oscars, but the rest of the long list for the BAFTAs is Ballad of a Small Player again, Begonia with that beautiful Vista Vision, Die My Love, F1, and Hamnet. And speaking of F1, that is one of the 5 Best Special Visual Effects nominees, which are Avatar, Fire and Ash, F1, Frankenstein, How to Train Your Dragon, and The Lost Bus. And for this, the difference with the Oscars here, there's no Jurassic Park, and they have How to Train Your Dragon instead. And there's no Sinners, and instead Frankenstein. So I support the first substitution. I'm less keen on the second substitution. As much as I love Frankenstein, I think Sinners should be here instead. They did a lot of great practical effects for Frankenstein, as we've talked about, and especially the Frankenstein breakdown. But Sinners did some really, almost invisible special effects with the whole twins thing and filming Michael B. Jordan twice, but also things like, The Lost Bus is nominated for basically its fire effects, and Sinners, I think, does an even more impressive, concentrated job of that. So anyway, again, they don't let me choose. I'll say The Lost Bus, solo nominee here. We haven't talked about it. I'm not a huge fan of the film. I think that the writing is just very I would be surprised if they told me that Chat GPT wasn't involved in that very generic, unrealistically generic, tropey script written in part apparently by the writer of Mare of Easttown. So I guess it's not surprising that they gave the main character, and I realize it's based on real people, but they really drilled down on him having the most pressing backstory as they set up like the first couple scenes are just him being yelled at by his boss. His family doesn't really like him. His dog has to be put down. It's like, come on, we don't need all of this extra stuff. But yeah, I thought Mare of Easttown was actually really well written. The Lost Bus, I didn't like it. So I don't think it's going to win either. It's just happy to be here. I'm surprised that it was nominated both here and at the Oscars. I do think this is Avatar Fire and Ashes to lose. No surprises there. This is obviously the third Avatar, back to Pandora. Talk about it more in the VFX for Oscars. We also talked about it already in costumes. It is the obvious winner, and I guess it is the deserving winner, although I'll say it doesn't feel as fresh as the last two. A big part of that is that they mostly reuse the same settings in this film. So if you haven't seen it yet and you're expecting to go, and see where the fire people come from, sorry to spoil that for you. But there is a new group of traders who have some cool ships, and I suppose that's the new addition here. And we talked about in the costume episode the costuming of the new antagonistic character. So there's that. But overall, yeah, it is just phenomenal CGI and 3D and all of that. So I'm I'm absolutely resigned, or maybe even happy for it to win. It was also longlisted for sound, although not nominated. This one is one of the ones you can't yet see at home. It is still in theaters. Now, F1, I shouted it out before because it did get 3 nominations for, it was longlisted in cinematography, but its 3 nominations at the BAFTAs are for visual effects, and then also for editing and sound. So indeed, I think these are the places where it should be nominated. The more technical categories, Best Picture seems like a stretch, Oscars, but I wasn't totally surprised by that. Obviously, we'll talk about that more in other episodes, but you can watch it on Apple TV. And yeah, it's about cars go vroom vroom. Brad Pitt, Jean's favorite Damson Idris, and also Carrie Condon. And then the totally new film in this category we haven't discussed yet in award season coverage at all is How to Train Your Dragon, which is a live-action remake of the animated film from 2010 about on the rugged island of Berk, where Vikings and dragons have been bitter enemies for generations. Hiccup stands apart, defying centuries of tradition when he befriends Toothless, a feared night fury dragon. Their unlikely bond reveals the true nature of dragons, challenging the very foundations of Viking society. So, as far as the movie, it didn't really engage me until Hiccup and Toothless start training, which feels like it takes a while. But then after that, I was completely locked in. Even though my theater experience for this was horrible, it was so bad that at one point the theater even stopped the film and threatened to call the police on a group of very disruptive young men. And that didn't actually stop after that. So it was quite a dramatic theater experience, but I was surprisingly into the film, even though I am as skeptical of these live action remakes as the next person. I can see where the nominee comes from. The dragons are great. I said this was instead of Jurassic Park with the dinosaurs. Maybe the Jurassic Park VFX, to be honest, is more photorealistic impressive, but I do think How to Train Your Dragon has the better story. So the other ones that were on the long list that could have gotten the nomination but didn't were indeed Jurassic World Rebirth, Mickey 17 again, Superman, Tron Ares, and Wicked for Good. And obviously Superman, I don't know if the VFX is my favorite part of Superman. There's some cool stuff there, but Superman, I just find it really upsetting that Superman is not getting recognition this this award season. This is definitely getting some blowback from the superhero fatigue, although I think most people agree that Superman and Thunderbolts were the two best superhero films of this year. Okay, if most people is just me, then fine, but I do think a lot of people especially loved Superman. We did, of course, do a deep dive into this one as well, so you'll find that linked in the show notes too. But I want to say, give in defense of Tron Ares here. I found that this film is kind of maybe overhated. I went in very skeptical because I really didn't enjoy the second Tron film at all. But I like this one much better. The premise is a highly sophisticated program called Ares is sent from the digital world into the real world on a dangerous mission, marking humankind's first encounter with AI beings. And of course, that program, Ares, was played by Jared Leto, who apparently was a driving force in getting this film made. And I know a lot of people don't like him. I get why. I don't really share that intense distaste. He doesn't ruin movies for me at all. So I actually quite enjoyed watching this one and would even want a sequel. I mean, is the writing good? No, absolutely not. But I would argue it's as good as Oscar nominee Avatar Fire and Ash or Best Picture nominee F1. But I actually think the visuals here were more exciting than Avatar, say. Maybe because it's something fresh, something new, but I think it's really cool the way it seamlessly combines eras, combining the technology from the original film with new cutting edge technology that literally is bursting out of this digital universe. It gave me some things that I've not seen anywhere else. I think that they were more inventive here than it's impressively realistic, but the spell is wearing off CGI of Avatar. Personally, that's my personal opinion. I also love the score, and I wish that the score had gotten an Oscar nomination or attention here. I think it was great. Anyway, if you want to see Tron Ares and decide for yourself, that is streaming on Disney. Which brings us to, how do they put it all together? Well, that's what the best editing category is about. And the 5 nominees here are F1, A House of Dynamite, Marty Supreme, One Battle After Another, and Sinners. So compared to the Oscar nominees, the one substitution is there's no sentimental value here, and instead we have A House of Dynamite, which I haven't really mentioned this one yet. The plot of A House of Dynamite is not if, when. When a single, unattributed missile is launched at the United States, a race begins to determine who is responsible and how to respond. And I have to be honest, I really did not like this one. It was a very one-sided, fear-mongering nuclear scare film that just definitively ignores even attempting to broach anything resembling answers, a plot, resolution, or a reason for the way that it ends or doesn't end. I don't know, every character's behavior in this makes me want to facepalm, and it just fills me with this deeply depressing thought that humanity is not capable of better than the absolute shittiest worst. So I think that this is the antithesis of the film we need right now. Catherine Bigelow, she's known for films like The Hurt Locker or Zero Dark 30, and granted, these war movies aren't my cup of tea in general, but I just thought that this was, I don't know, it really felt so empty and frustrating for me. There's a couple Alex Garland apolitical films recently that I've also rubbed up against. There's Civil War, which there are some aspects of that I do quite like, and Warfare, which I just... I did my whole rant in the spirits. I won't get back into this. So I would rank this between Warfare and Civil War, but closer to the bottom, to the Warfare end of the scale. Although I will say up front, Rebecca Ferguson did no wrong, of course. This is the only nomination that House of Dynamite got, but it was longlisted 4 times, so also for director Catherine Bigelow, original screenplay, and casting. And if you want to see and decide for yourself, you can find it on Netflix. The rest of the long list for this one is 28 Years Later, Begonia, Frankenstein, Hamnet, and Weapons. And 28 Years Later is definitely the one that I would want to win. I did gush a little bit earlier about how inventive the editing there, how it's, breaking new ground. And I can see why that rubs some people the wrong way. But actually, this is what I would want. What I would want to award in a film is doing something new. We'll see how people feel about the editing. Probably, I think in like 10 years' time, people are going to be like, oh, 28 years later, that changed the game. Or at least it should be like that. I'll be saying that. I'll be the people saying that. Anyway, it's not going to win. So, because anyway, it didn't get nominated, so no chance of winning. So who will win? This is one, I think, where it's going to be between Vroom Vroom and Pew Pew. I could see House of Dynamite getting in there, but like with the Oscars, I'm going to say that F1 is the front runner. Speaking of Vroom Vroom and Pew Pew, the final tech category, let's talk about Best Sound, where the nominees are F1, Frankenstein, One Battle After Another, Sinners, and Warfare. And Warfare is also longlisted for Outstanding British Film. That's the only other place it showed up. As I've said, I don't love it myself, but here we go. Vroom Vroom versus Pew Pew. Best Sound has got to go to one of those two. The difference with the Oscar nominations is there's no Sirat here. It wasn't even longlisted. And so we have Warfare here instead. I just think Sirat is so much of a more interesting nominee for this. It's about raves in the desert, so the sound is really important for that. I'm kind of rooting for that one in some ways to win the Oscar, but it's not present here, so I think it's between F1 and Warfare. Although maybe One Battle or Sinners breaks in with just, the sheer love for those films. I did say I think that One Battle has the edge at the BAFTAs over Sinners. But the rest of the long list that didn't get nominated is Avatar Fire and Ash, Begonia, The Lost Bus, Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning, and Wicked for Good. We have Sinners here. We have Wicked for Good here. This is another category where musicals do well because that's important. Sound. All right, this is a good spot to take one final break before we come back and discuss the final three special features categories. Be right back. Okay, you ready to get serious for a second? Because let's dive into the Best Documentary nominees here. The nominees for Best Documentary at the BAFTAs are 2,000 Meters to Andreevka, Apocalypse in the Tropics, Cover Up, Mr. Nobody Against Putin, and The Perfect Neighbor. I will be discussing probably all of these to some degree in depth in the Oscars episode, but let's dive in a bit more. I'll say the front runner in this category here and at the Oscars is The Perfect Neighbor. It's on Netflix. It's about police body cam footage that reveals how a long-running neighborhood dispute turned fatal in this documentary about fear, prejudice, and stand your ground laws. We will talk about this more in the Oscar episode. It's compelling in a true crime kind of way. It's not necessarily my favorite, but it's the favorite to win overall. It's been winning a lot of the awards. It could well win here, or it could be too American, and they might go another direction. We'll come back to that. The other Oscar nominee that's also nominated here is Mr. Nobody Against Putin. The setup for this is as Russia launches its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, primary schools across Russia's hinterlands are transformed into recruitment stages for the war. Facing the ethical dilemma of working in a system defined by propaganda and violence, a brave teacher goes undercover to film what's really happening in his own school. And I wouldn't say he's going undercover. He's just filming stuff and taking it with him and as he exits the country stage left and works with David Borenstein to make this film. So indeed, also an Oscar nomination. Definitely we'll talk about it more there. You can watch it on BBC iPlayer or Video On Demand. Which brings us to the other three films were not nominated for Oscars. They were all on the Oscars long list. Let's say the Oscar nominations that didn't show up here are The Alabama Solution, Come See Me in the Good Light, and Cutting Through Rocks. So we'll talk about those in that episode. But the three we got here instead are one that was considered a front runner at the beginning of the season, 2,000 Meters to Andreevka. This is Mstislav Chernov's follow-up to the 2024 BAFTA and Oscar-winning 20 Days in Mariupol. So this is about set in Ukraine, actually following boots on the ground there as they fight their war. And amid the failing counteroffensive, a journalist follows a Ukrainian platoon on their mission to traverse 1 mile of heavily fortified forest and liberate a strategic village from Russian occupation. But the farther they advance through their destroyed homeland, the more they realize that this war may never end. So, yeah, I've already said that I don't love warfare. I actually recommend watching this instead if you want to know what it's like to actually be on a mission with the military. This is literally taking you on a mission with the military. But this offers context. It helps you understand the goals of the mission, that's important, and the obstacles of the unit and the cause of the danger. And the soldiers, they come across as real people. They are actually real people, and they take a second to humanize each of them instead of just having them sort of empty-headed vessels fighting for who knows what. I don't know. It's just watching this. It's like, here's something. Here's a movie about war that actually means something. I mean, and Warfare is a movie about glamorizing battle, I suppose. I don't know. I don't get Warfare. But watch 2,000 Meters to Andreevka and ask yourself, do we really want to glamorize war? This certainly does not, but it really does show you what it's actually like. So I do think this could be a front runner here, even though it didn't get the Oscar nomination. Particularly here in Europe, we are still feeling the war in Ukraine rather keenly. Of course, Britain is a bit more separated from us on the mainland, but yeah, I could see this one doing well. The other one that was not nominated, actually my favorite in this category, could also be a winner, is from Brazil. Apocalypse in the Tropics. It's Petra Costa's follow-up to her 2020 Oscar, but not BAFTA, nominated The Edge of Democracy. And the setup for this one is, when does a democracy end and a theocracy begin? Petra Costa investigates the increasingly powerful grip Christian evangelical leaders hold over politics in Brazil. She gains extraordinary access to the country's top political leaders, including President Lula and former President Bolsonaro, as well as to Brazil's most famous televangelist, a magnetic pastor who aspires to play puppet master to the far-right leader. As I said, this is my personal favorite on this list. It is beautifully photographed, for one, and there's enthralling sound design, and she narrates it as almost like it's a sort of dark fairy tale, which I find just very captivating. It's a chilling portrait of not just the ascent of far-right, quote-unquote, Christian populism, but also an investigation into why it ascends, the very human forces behind it, from the power-hungry puppets to their puppet masters who realize that the true lasting power is not actually to be found on the front lines, to also the true believers who are looking for answers in empty places, as it turns out, to the most rabid of their brethren who are controlled by these cowardly anxieties that whisper in their ears that the only way they can survive is if the entire world is bent to their will. And they are, of course, ironically ignorant of the fact that they are, in fact, bending themselves to the will of someone else who has no interest in sharing the benefits of that fear-mongered power. So, yes, I have opinions. Apocalypse in the Tropics, I think, is one of those films that you just absolutely need to watch right now to contextualize what's going on in the broader world. And you can watch that on Netflix. And then the other one that didn't get the Oscar nomination, though it was on the long list there, is Cover Up. This is about journalist Seymour Hersh, who's devoted his career to uncovering stories the powerful want buried. From My Lai to Abu Ghraib, dig into the life's work of journalist Seymour Hersh. And This one I expected to like a lot more than I ultimately ended up liking it. I'm usually keen on a documentary about journalism. I would say the most depressingly insightful part of this is just seeing how the New York Times behaved toward him. But yeah, I would say overall, I did have some trouble concentrating on this one. This man had an absolutely incredible career. It is a bit depressing to see how all these famous acts of journalism from history, so many of them were instigated by a single man. And it just makes you think, where is everybody else? Why are other people not stepping up to this same degree? Because that's what we desperately need in order to get people to pay attention to what's going on in the world and get things back on the right side up, to a world where more people feel safe and free. So, a very impressive man. But the problem with the structure of this film is that it's sort of like an overview of his entire career. And every time I'd start to get into a story, they'd jump into another. And some of them were much more compelling than others. So ultimately, I don't know, it kind of lost me a few times. I'll say the director, Laura Poitras, her last big documentary was All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, which was one that other people liked a lot more than I did. So take that for what it's worth. If you want to check it out for yourself, you can find Cover Up on Netflix. So those are the 5 nominees. As I said, The Perfect Neighbors considered the front runner overall at all the award ceremonies, although I wouldn't be surprised to see, and actually would kind of like to see, either 2,000 Meters to Andreevka or my personal favorite, Apocalypse in the Tropics, win this one here instead. We'll see. The rest of the long list that wasn't nominated included Becoming Led Zeppelin, which is, it's sort of more concert film than documentary a lot of the time, but it does tell you the stories about the band members and how they got together. My favorite from the short list is The Librarians, which you can find on the BBC iPlayer. It's about the tough position that librarians in the US have been put in with all of the book banning that's been going on in recent years, and their struggle to try to protect the children who want to read books that reflect, different ethnicities, different neurodivergences or sexual orientations or identities, and that are now being told that it's porn. It's really mind-blowing and infuriating, all these classics that I was taught in school, the way they're being treated now in many places. And yeah, I can't help. I know a lot of librarians, and I love librarians. And you see in this documentary how important their work is. So if you want to watch that one, it's on the BBC iPlayer. And then the other 3 long-listed ones were Ocean with David Attenborough. I already brought that up. It's exactly what you expect from the title. 1-to-1 John and Yoko. That's obviously about John Lennon and Yoko Ono. And it's about specifically when they moved to New York City. And it blends together news footage from the time and other clips from popular culture on television, arguing that these were influencing their acts with phone calls that they had and interviews that they gave and what they were up to in their after they moved to New York City. And then the final one on the list is Riefenstahl, about Leni Riefenstahl, the filmmaker who became the #1 propagandist in Nazi Germany, and interviewing her in all of the ensuing years after that, as she really bucked any sort of responsibility for her role in the Nazi regime and downplayed her friendship with Hitler. But you just see how constantly she is contradicting herself. It doesn't, I would say it doesn't paint a bad portrait of her. It allows her to paint a bad portrait of herself. But then you also get that depressing, all these people supporting her. It's just, humanity never learns from our worst atrocities. It is a bit of a depressing one, but an interesting one. So that's the documentary category. Let's end with some 2 lighter categories, not to be confused with each other. The first one is Best Animated Film, and I just want to point out that an animated film does not need to be for children. It is just a medium. Although, with one exception from the long list here, all of the BAFTA recognized animated films are definitely for children. So there's only 3 nominations in this category, like the animated shorts, which also only has 3 animations. So the absolute disrespect for the medium of animation at the BAFTAs. Ugh. But it is what it is, and it's like this every year. The 3 nominees this year are Elio, Little Amelie, or the character of Rain, and Zootopia 2. All 3 are also Oscar nominations, so we will talk about them more there. The 2 that are missing from the Oscar nominations are Arco and K-Pop Demon Hunters. And K-Pop Demon Hunters, again, was ineligible because Netflix declined to follow the rules and show the movie in the UK for a week. Would have been an easy thing that didn't cost them much, but like I said, I'm glad to see other animated films get a chance to shine. Now, Elio and Zootopia 2 are the 2 big studio ones. Elio, if you didn't see it, or is it Elio? I forget how they pronounce it, but anyway, the premise is they asked for our leader. They got him. Elio, a space fanatic with an active imagination, finds himself in a cosmic misadventure where he must form new bonds with eccentric alien life forms, navigate a crisis of intergalactic proportions, and somehow discover who he is truly meant to be. You can watch this one on Disney Plus, and I found it really charming. I liked this one. I especially liked the world building in this one. I wasn't really as blown away as I was with Little Amelie, or the character of Rain, which is about when you're 3 years old, you see everything and understand nothing. The world is a perplexing, peaceful mystery to Amelie until a miraculous encounter with chocolate ignites her wild sense of curiosity. As she develops a deep attachment to her family's housekeeper, Nishio-san, Amelie discovers the wonders of nature as well as the emotional truths hidden beneath the surface of her family's idyllic life as foreigners in post-war Japan. So if I got to choose for this category for the BAFTAs, this would be the winner, no contest. I will talk about it more in the Oscars episode, where this one and Arco are my 2 favorites. If you want to see it for yourself, it is out on VOD now, on video on demand now. But I do think chances are the winner of this category will be Zootopia 2, the biggest financially on this list, at least. I'm calling it Zootopia 2 here. That's what it's called in the US. I have to say, in the UK and in Europe, like here, I bought a ticket for Zootropolis 2. So you'll hear it called Zootropolis 2 at the BAFTAs. But the summary is, in the American version, Zootopia will be changed forever. See, it's spelled like fur, like an animal. You get it. Anyway, after cracking the biggest case in Zootopia's history, rookie cops Judy Hopps and Nick Wilde find themselves on the twisting trail of a great mystery when Gary DeSnake arrives and turns the animal metropolis upside down. To crack the case, Judy and Nick must go undercover to unexpected new parts of town where their growing partnership is tested like never before. And this one was also nominated for Children's and Family Film. You can watch it on video on demand. So the rest, it is also a shorter long list for this category, only 6 on the long list. So the other 3 that didn't make it are Arco, which we will talk about in the next category, The Bad Guys 2, which I'll get back to in a second, and Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba Infinity Castle, which I have not yet watched this one because I am currently watching my way through the 5 seasons of television before this that set up this movie. So my plan is to binge all that before we do the animated Oscars episode, so I can talk about it more then. But let's back up to Bad Guys 2 for a second. This is the one with Sam Rockwell as the quote-unquote sexy Mr. Fox. So there's a lot of love for him on Letterboxd in a very sexual way. Absolute all-star cast with Mark Maron, Awkwafina, Craig Robinson, Anthony Ramos, Zazie Beetz, Danielle Brooks, Natasha Lyonne, Maria Bakalova, Alex Borstein, etc., etc. I found this one, I found the first Bad Guys movie just kind of very lackluster, mid. It's not a word I use much, but I found it quite mid. This one I found a massive improvement, the writing and the humor. I do think I even liked The Bad Guys 2 better than Zootropolis, Zootopia, whatever you want to call it, 2, which I felt kind of meh about, to be honest. But I quite enjoyed The Bad Guys 2, though I did have to work overtime to turn off the science and logic parts of my brain when it gets especially to the climax. But the character writing, which is always the most important thing to me, that really worked for me. Although I have questions about this world because it does seem like when you look around in the background, most people are human, but yet they have a fox as the governor. I'm very confused about how animals and humans are integrated in this world and why there seems to be so many more humans than animals, but all the characters we follow are animals. I don't know. Is that to distinguish from Zootopia? Whatever. But The Bad Guys 2, pleasant watch. You can definitely find a worse way to spend a couple hours. So that brings us to the final category, Best Children's and Family Film. And this is a unique category for the BAFTAs. There are 4 nominations in this category, as usual, and that is Arco, Boong, Lilo and Stitch, and again, Zootopia 2. So do I think Zootopia 2 will win here as well? Unfortunately, yeah, perhaps maybe, although we do have Arco here, the other Oscar nominee, and maybe the fact that it wasn't nominated in animation will do it well here and people will rally behind it so that it gets a win. We'll see. As I said, in the animated category, the ones that are nominated for Oscars, Arco is tied with Amelie for my favorite. The setup here is, what if rainbows were people from the future traveling in time? 10-year-old Arco lives in a far future. During his first flight in his rainbow suit, he loses control and falls into the past. Iris, a girl his age from 2075, comes to his rescue and tries by all means to help send him back to his era. And this one, it's just, yeah, as you can already tell in the description, excellent world building. I really liked the characters. There's some really fun, not even villains per se, but antagonists in here. Just, the theater I was in just had an absolute ball watching this. It is currently playing in theaters in the US, and I'm not sure, is it still in theaters in the UK? I know here in the Netherlands, they brought it back to theaters because of the nominations. Here, and the way I saw it, it's often in the original French language with English subtitles, but I think in the US it's playing exclusively with the English dub, which does have an A-list American cast. It will finally allegedly be available on video on demand on February 24th. A lot of death racers are breathing a sigh of relief about that, so it'll be easier to watch then if you haven't gotten a chance to see it yet. So Arco and Zootopia, those are the 2 animated films on this list. This, again, not an animated category, so the other 2 films are live action. Lilo and Stitch, you've probably heard of that one. It is, of course, the live action remake to the classic animated film. And I'll be honest, this is another one where I liked the live action remake much better than I expected. I had a good time with this one. I don't remember the original well enough, I think, to get lost in the details of changes from the adaptation. I don't think it's the best written film, but yeah, I had a good time and I'm genuinely looking forward to the sequel that is already in progress. It is, of course, to quote the marketing, the wildly funny and touching story of a lonely Hawaiian girl and the fugitive alien who helps to mend her broken family. So you can check it out for yourself if you haven't yet on Disney. I don't necessarily think it will win. I do think it'll be between the 2 animated films. But let's talk about the last film, which is another live action film, probably the one you have not heard of, which is Boong. To set it up, in the valley of Manipur, Boong, a little boy, plans to surprise his mother with a gift. In his innocence, he believes that bringing his father home will be the most special. But his search culminates in a different, unexpected gift, a new beginning. So this was a sweet film, obviously, about family drama. I am really glad that this film nudged me to do a deep dive into Manipur, a part of Northeast India that I've been curious about, but know very little about. So this kind of gave a primer on that and kind of has a sad addendum at the end that fighting has broken out and destroyed a lot of what is filmed in this. So it is sort of preserving a time capsule of what the border with Burma there used to look and be like. So I'm very glad that I watched this one. I have to say it is the hardest to find on this list. But if that does intrigue you, keep an eye out for Bong to be coming out. And so the long list here is 8 in total. So there's 4 that didn't get nominated. That would be Elio, which we just talked about, How to Train Your Dragon, and Little Amelie, which we just talked about, in other categories as well. So interesting that Arco got in children and family film, and Little Amelie in animation, but not both in either. So it's tough to say which has the advantage there. As I said, those are my 2 favorites. But the new one on this long list that we haven't discussed anywhere else is a film called Grow, one that I wouldn't have heard of if not for this nomination. And to set it up, big dreams, bigger pumpkins. In the self-proclaimed pumpkin capital of the world, no-nonsense, curmudgeonly farmer Dinah Little takes in her estranged niece Charlie, who decides to enter the local pumpkin growing competition where she and the other growers face fierce competition, sabotage, and a genetically engineered rival. So this one, the writing is nothing to write home about, to be honest, but I had a really fun time watching it. It's kind of like one of the sillier episodes of Doctor Who, but it's definitely better than the worst Doctor Who episodes. Like, this is no Space Babies. I had a genuinely good time here. I laughed out loud at some of the jokes. Like, for instance, they have like a mutilated someone wakes up to find a mutilated pumpkin in their bed, Godfather style. And I just love that. Between this, and I just recently watched and wrote a review about the Brazilian animated film Papaya for 2026. Maybe that will be a 2027 Oscar nominee or BAFTA nominee, who knows? But I do kind of like the trend that recent children's movies are all about indoctrinating kids into organic farming life. So that's definitely a tone here. It's got a great cast. We've got Golda Rocheval who plays Queen Charlotte in Bridgerton. She is the curmudgeonly farmer Dinah Little. We have Nick Frost as her friend, and I thought it was a great child performance as well. So, if you have kids, definitely show them Grow. It's a lot of fun. This one is available to stream on Sky in the UK or on video on demand in the US. And that's it. Those are all the nominees for the BAFTAs, and also all the long-listed films. I promised that I would give you my top 10. So to set up this top 10, I'm including films that were not nominated for any Oscars or Spirit Awards. Counting down, I'll give an honorable mention on behalf of Marilyn for The Coral. Remember her voicemail, and also the similar-ish Mr. Burton. You can watch The Coral on video on demand and Mr. Burton on iPlayer. And then for my top 10, I have a tie for number 10. I'm cheating. So my tie for number 10 is Rental Family, the one with Brendan Fraser in Japan. You can watch that on Hulu or rent it on video on demand. Or from the long list, Hedda, which you can watch on Amazon Prime, the Tessa Thompson one about an unhappy woman lashing out in deliciously diabolical ways. Number 9, I have Steve, which is Cillian Murphy trying to rescue a school and fight his own demons at the same time. You can watch that on Netflix. Number 8, I have I Swear, about Robert Armao playing a real man who helped the rest of the world understand what Tourette's is and what it looks like. You can find that in the UK on video on demand. Pillion with Harry Melling and Alexander Skarsgård in a BDSM rom-com. You can also find that on video on demand in the UK. The Ballad of Wallace Island, about getting a folk band back together years after a breakup drove them apart. You can find that on Prime or video on demand. Hello, it's Elysia, the editor from the future, because I forgot something. I forgot two key movies because I changed my own rules saying that I could include movies in this list from the long list. And so allow me to squeeze one of them in here as a tie with The Ballad of Wallace Island, Mickey 17 on HBO. I talked about it a lot earlier. Check it out. From the long list, Superman, which again, I just think woefully underrepresented this award season. I just, the scene where Lois interrogates Clark alone just absolutely blew me away from a writing perspective. And what I love about Superman is I keep hearing anecdotes from people who have kids or are teachers of kids, and they're saying, especially middle-aged kids, which are often the meanest age, and they're saying that after Superman came out, there was a sort of bubble of kindness, of people trying to be kinder to each other for a while, these kids especially. And for me, it just goes to show why we need more of this hope punk cinema. And I think that if we told stories that are both kinder and more realistic at the same time in terms of the complex realities of navigating the sociology of our world, I think that the kids would be better off. So I'm hoping that more people follow in Superman's footsteps in that regard. And if we want to see how things can get worse, I have the documentary Apocalypse in the Tropics about the role the evangelical movement played in the rise and fall of Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil. You can watch that one on Netflix. And then number 3, I have Wicked for Good, Justice for Wicked for Good. It's a movie that has a lot of depth in addition to just being an absolutely gorgeous movie. I won't call it perfect, but I do think it's one of the better movies this year. You can watch that on video on demand. In second place, one of my favorite movies of the year. This is from the long list. Didn't get a nomination here, but I'm still going to shout out Left-Handed Girl, which you can watch on Netflix, about the mother and 2 daughters in Taiwan, just trying to get by and eke out a living for themselves and all the craziness that comes up in their life. And Elysia from the future is back with my second accidental omission from this list. I'm going to make it a tie with number 2, Left-Handed Girl. That is No Other Choice. That is the South Korean dramedy about a man who will do anything to keep his job and be able to afford his family. So No Other Choice. Check it out on video on demand. And then, of course, surprising no one, my number 1 of the BAFTA-only features for Lorehounds is 28 Years Later, the zombie movie with heart and poetry, which you can experience for yourself now on Netflix. And then do watch the sequel, The Bone Temple, and then listen to our episode coming up all about that. So speaking of what's coming up, the BAFTAs air this Sunday afternoon, hosted by Alan Cumming. So in the UK, they're on BBC One or iPlayer, and they are playing in various other places around the world. Again, I put that link in the show notes where you can look up where they might be near you. It does say it's on HBO Max in Australia, just saying, for anyone that's useful too. I will host another live watch chat for this one on Discord this Sunday. This will be earlier in the day. It's 5 p.m. UK time, so 6 p.m. my time. So it's 11 a.m. Eastern time in the US, which means it's 8 a.m. On Pacific time. So sorry, I know that's super early, but if you can join, yeah, that will be fun. As for the rest of the series, will be very Oscars focused, talking about the Oscar nominees, one cluster of categories at a time. Starting with the next episode will be about the production design categories, followed by the international films and tech awards, then docs, etc. Meanwhile, of course, our other Lorehounds coverage going strong with weekly coverage of The Pit by John and David, weekly coverage of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms with we're doing a whole cross-feed coverage here with 2 episodes a week on Properly Howard and the main breakdown on the Lorehounds feed. And then coming start of March, as I keep promising, The Bone Temple, which is now out on video on demand. If you want to, you can catch up on the first film on Netflix, and the second film is on video on demand now. And of course, check out what's going on the other affiliates. Never Mind the Music, where psychology meets music. Radioactive Ramblings, which I guess they've just wrapped up the new season of Fallout. And Properly Howard is also starting a new season of their, they just completed their film draft, so you can listen to that episode and it's always the most complicated film drafts, but it's a very fun lineup for this season. So check that out on their feed. So this, of course, brings me to the most important thank yous, where first of all, I would like to thank all of you who are listening. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I hope that you enjoyed this insight into the BAFTAs. And I would especially thank you if you could share this episode with anyone else whom you think might be interested in learning more about these British films and what's up for one of the most important award ceremonies for film this year. And every year. And also, of course, if you have any nice words to say, please leave a rating review wherever you are listening to this. That helps us enormously. But special shout out as ever to our Discord server boosters who make that a great place to hang. Thank you to Aaron K, Tiller the Thriller, Duve71, Athena Ajalea, Lestu, Nancy M, Ghost of Partition, Radioactive Richard, and Adrian. Thank you to all of our subscribers who make it possible for us to keep doing this. Tell your friends. If we have more subscribers, we can do more. We can focus more of our lives on this so that episodes can be more timely. Thank you most of all to our highest tier, the Lore Masters, Samartian, Michael G, Michelle E, SC, Peter OH, Nancy M, Duve71, Brian 8063, Frederick H, Sarah L, Gareth C, Andra B, Kwang Yu, Nathan T, Sub-Zero, Aaron K, Dali V, Mothership 61, Gnarls, Kathy W, The Stew, Jeffrey B, Elysia U, Ben B, Scott F, Stephen N, Julia F, Carly S, Ilmariel, Paul K, Rocky Zim, Jessica A, Red Zippy, The TCS, Dopamini, Catch It, LNR, Mrs. Tennant, AC Wilson, Eli W, Cassie K, Chumbarooney, Katia, Josh Liu, Paintin PDX, Corey G, Quinch, and always last, Adrian. Thank you all so much, and hope to see some of you for the live watch on Discord this Sunday. If not, see you for the next Oscars episode, breaking down production design, costumes, and makeup and hair. Okay, bye!
The Lorehounds podcast is produced and published by The Lorehounds. You can send questions and feedback and voicemails at thelorehounds.com/contact. Get early and ad-free access to all Lorehounds podcasts at patreon.com/thelorehounds. Any opinions stated are ours personally and do not reflect the opinion of or belong to any employers or other entities. Thanks for listening.